Hi, everybody.
Hello,
Sorry I'm late.
Bartleby.
Sorry
Bartleby.
I'm late.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know if
man, you're 1 minute late.
I don't
Oh,
know if
it's
Lork's going to be here. We'll give
inexcusable.
him a couple minutes, but
And I have to leave early too. Apologies.
Oh no.
Yeah,
When?
I can only stay for 2 hours.
It's okay.
well, at least since I'm recording, you can, you know, watch the end of your character.
Glorious end, glorious.
Whoops. No.
Okay. The way it's gonna be, eh?
Um, we'll give
My
Lork
notes
like
from
2 or
last
3.
session.
Your notes from last session. Now, I don't know if you
Oh
saw
wow.
my post. I did put in Foundry. If you go to journals, you can actually put notes there. If you go to game logs, if you click on the journal tab and go to game logs, there's one that's going to call Eaves of Davokar, and there's a character session journals. And if you want, you could add a page and title it and type notes in there and either keep adding pages or just keep adding to your notes. You don't have to, um, but it's one of those options. I also put NPCs met or known, and I put all the names that you know so far.
Ooh, nice.
Right.
I
So
appreciate that very much.
hopefully you guys can see that, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Permissions are set up nicely.
Yeah. You don't have
Awesome.
to keep a journal. It's just I put it there in case you want to type it in there and
Yeah.
keep it that way. But I will
And
probably
you,
add game journals this weekend, like from the first and second session. I just didn't have time this week.
well, it's handy material for you too. Like, I mean, if you see that, we focus on some aspect of things or another. I mean, or take notes about certain things. You spy on that as a GM.
Yeah.
You know.
Bartleby keeps me on track if I forget something. He keeps good notes too.
I keep a lot of notes.
Right. It does help me as a GM to like remember stuff sometimes because my brain is going so quickly occasionally that I miss things or I realize I said something odd or and when if we do the downtime like I had posted, that's also a place to kind of keep that track. But we're start. I don't think Lork's going to be here. I know he wasn't going to be here tomorrow, so I don't know if he was out Thursday too. But um, to begin with, would anyone like to do a recap? Any of the players, or would you like me to do it? Any of the players can do recap if they like of last session. Um, it's kind of up to you.
My memory of last session is pretty fresh, I think.
That's okay. I can do a recap. I just offer to players if they like to give a recap from their perspective. I don't mind doing a recap. A lot of the other games, you know. And so last session, essentially the company came together in the forest, fighting a juvenile forest worm in multiple um, different avenues. I guess we're missing Joe too. I forgot. Um and they met each other in that fashion. Lazarus hadn't been attacked and carried by the worm, Lasker having tracked the worm, Verama having tracked Lasker, Candu met in that. And then they uh, started moving towards Carvasi when they met three Wrathguards, Eonid, Arona, and Malcor. And the Wrathguards offered them aid under the barbarian fashion, where they got to choose what that aid was: stand and fight, or help them back to Carvosi. And they made probably a superior decision of going back to Carvosi because they had perhaps two adult and one juvenile forest worm hunting them down, and they proceeded to Carvosi. They went up the ramp. collected some Wrathguards, and they came through the gate where they immediately entered a moment of tension. There were Templars and Wrathguards kind of standing off, and in the middle was the diminutive form of the witch Ephronia. Eventually, each party member was questioned about why they were here and who they were, and they probably learned that the gate itself has some degree of protection against those who are tainted or those who have a lot of shadow or close to becoming abomination in some degree. And then that tension was released in some degree, and the company had their first impressions of Carvosti, the elevated plane in the expanse. They went past the main barbarian area and the log house, which is run by two barbarians called Ova and Terisma, both in their 50s. They ultimately sold some of their forest worm meat there. They witnessed a trial of honor and argument up on a tree log between a carrot and an odav, and Kandu won a bunch of money betting. And they also witnessed a goblin archer or a Gutorm and a trial of archery on the training or sparring area where lots of training and sparring happens right next to the stronghold of Carvosti. And then there were some dead hours or period of time where they were finding their place. Lazarus and Lascar went to the pilgrim village and were looking for traps, which they learned was the best trap maker on Carvosti was an ogre called Crewdraw, which they sort of met in the log house, who was drunk and passed out in a corner. They also saw a woman named Salvia who was selling kind of cakes, and another man named Iarlo that was making stew in this big kind of metal pot, and probably learned of the de facto leader of the pilgrim village called Edrafin. And then there was some degree of rest and downtime. Ultimately, what happened is that Gutorm witnessed a woman just walking towards the edge of the plateau and followed her. That woman grabbed him and almost pulled him over the edge as she essentially fell over the edge of Carvosi with kind of a blank look on her face. He heard this other voice around him telling the woman to let him go because he couldn't break free on his own. And as he watched her fall to her death, he saw this huge abomination coming up the cliff face past the alarm bells or alarm system of Carvosi, and ultimately a battle against the abomination occurred in which the party members all contributed in some degree and fashion. Anyone have anything to add really to that relatively brief part?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, okay. So what I thought we'd do first is talk about Downtime. I don't know if everyone read that little Downtime PDF I sent. And
Where?
it's
I think I missed that one.
yeah, if you look, I'll describe it to you. Bartleby and I will probably play an example of it. But if you go to Discord, down to the Eaves out of character in the Symbaroum part, can you see that part?
Yeah.
Ah, right. Ah, shit. Okay.
That's okay. It kind of details downtime. Downtime is not necessarily when you're just coming back from an adventure and have periods of time or days in a town or that sort of thing. It's also the small moments between other events that you're more participating, like the small moments when you're at the log house, or the small moments when you're walking through the pilgrim village, the small moments after the battle with the abomination. And downtime, the idea of downtime is that players can work on goals or advance certain goals or certain ideas about their character and kind of deepen those ideas that if we don't play through some of them. And they may get a future leg up on the adventure or do something that gives them a temporary bonus for the next session. And really, Downtime kind of deepens that play because some of those things that are in character goals, we don't like hit each time. And so Downtime kind of does that. In general, it is it at the moment has a couple things you can do in that idea, from cultivating a relationship, okay, to or developing one, to gathering intelligence about some place you're going to go or something you want to know about, to doing research about a particular thing to your character's goals or desires or in the future kind of event, and to doing revelry or carousing, like, that sort of thing where you're just blowing off steam and spending money, which has both mishaps and boons attached to it, and or doing something spiritual, calming your spirit, taking a breath, which has inherent kind of bonuses for the next session, that sort of thing. And so it's a relatively quick thing we do at the beginning, which is mostly improv. And you kind of decide either throughout the week or in the moment what you would do. Those downtime activities may change some as your characters or as the game goes because they become more influential. And so you could do other things, developing a stronghold, those type of things. But at the moment, downtime's kind of, those are the most important things at the moment. It is kind of an old school way because we don't really use stats or particular things your characters are good at, so that each player can maybe do certain downtimes without relying on cunning or lore master or that sort of thing, and advance those kind of lines, whether it's information or resource or developing a contact. And we'll see how it works. A lot of times I've seen that it can kind of deepen that play for each separate character because it's more character centric. We go through each one. And you can kind of read about it. I took that from a particular downtime book, which I talk about in the thing. If you have any questions, you can PM. But I believe, Bartleby, you had a particular downtime thing that you would like to do with Verama as
That's right.
kind of an example. And so what happens with downtime? I ask you, what would you like to do? What is that? What is one of those actions in downtime that Verama would like to do?
Right. So she's been feeling, especially after this recent incident that happened, I think she would just need a little bit of need to get away from the settlement for a little bit. So she would leave the settlement and go out into the forest, not into the dark forest, but she would try to find a place that's really where there are no paths, and maybe start kind of walking around the area and kind of feeling its energy. I would say like a couple hours walk out of Carvosti, and so going a couple hours maybe northeast of Carvosti, and finding an area that looks very sort of wild and that has not been seen, maybe the path or the treading of human feet, and she would sort of inspect the area and kind of walk through it and sort of absorb some of its energies, and then at one point she would say, after a while, she would say, no, this isn't the right place, and then she would move on to another place. And she would probably do that throughout the day, and it would take her probably a full day to do it, but at the end of the day she would find a place and she would say, this is the spot, and she would just know that this is the spot, and she would try to envision what it's going to look like when she has grown some of her trees and plants there. And for now, I think she would so through some of the mystic spells and stuff, she'll be able to do this later on a much faster scale. But for now, I think she would take out a couple of the seeds that she's brought with her from up north and plant them and tend to them, and maybe depending on how long the downtime lasts, if it's a couple of days or 3 days or 4 days or something like that, she would stay there and just kind of talk to the seeds and then like plant them and then make sure they get some water and they're put in nice and gently and the earth is pushed down but not too hard. And then she would kind of whisper some of the ways of the forest to the seeds to try to get those to grow.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fit research information. It's probably one of the other ones I got to add. But what we'll do is I would have you roll 2d6, which is how we. And
Maybe it's revelry. She's having a party by herself.
I'd have you roll 2d6 plus 1 because you're moving around Davokar trying to find a spot where the seeds would take. And so you roll 2d6 plus 1. Everything under a 6 is, oh, there you go.
Cool.
Right. I think, yeah, that's pretty high. And that's a pretty somewhat major success. And I would think that Verama does find an area that she settles the seeds in, perhaps in a glade or in an area that has good soil but doesn't have as much competition. Otherwise, her seeds won't take if they're in them. And what I'll do is I'll create a tracker for you, and if she works on that grove, that tracker will have different advances to that grove. It have 3 or 5 or 7 spots. But at the moment, she's just found an area that she thinks might work, and she's planted the seeds. And long term, that's more going to be like developing a mercantile or business, but we'll approach it from that thing, which isn't quite in the downtime rules yet, but I'll add
Sure.
them and kind of it's the same sort of thing. And so with that success, obviously with an 11, which is an 11, almost a 12, she definitely finds an area that she feels that would work. And with rolling an 11, she's planted the seeds, and she's marked the kind of spot where they are and remembered it in her mind. And so you have to see how it goes. Each time you do that downtime activity, you make that similar roll. Like, does that advance? Does that increase? And so the more effort you put into that downtime, the more likelihood, and there'll probably be 5 or 7 different blocks of success for that throughout each session. If she's not in the area, obviously she can't do that, but we'll approach it that way. And then I'll add that. There's a couple other things you can do in downtime, but I'll add that in. It's kind of like developing a stronghold, and that's just a little bit different. She's developing a grove, and I'll add that kind of idea within downtime and to the PDF, so you can kind of read about it.
Cool.
But that's kind of the way I would approach that. Sound good?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great.
Welcome, Joe.
Thanks. I thought it was 8 o'clock.
Oh, that's tomorrow.
No, it says right here, Thursday, November
You sure?
p.m. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Looking right at it.
You signed up for the GM discussion. You signed up for
Oh,
both.
you mean we have multiple sessions today?
No, I do. Like some of the other GMs, we thought we'd get together and talk about.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, just GMing. I was curious why you signed it up. I thought maybe you
You're
would
like, what the hell?
start running games. but
You're like, is Joe going to do something I don't know?
right, I thought,
Oh,
well,
he's going to take over his DM?
Joe's going to run some games. Great. But I guess you signed up by mistake.
I did, but I have run games in the past.
Right. And probably a little confusion. We had talked about we did a recap, and then we talked about downtime, which I believe you've read. Did Joe have any particular thing he'd like to do with Lazarus for downtime?
I didn't really go through it thoroughly enough for me to make any real decision.
Right.
The basic thing that I think I was going to manifest me kindled a relationship with a woman that I got friendly with.
The 50-year-old tavern married barbarian?
No.
Yeah, oh,
Before, when we first got into town, or is that the other game? Am I getting mixed up with the other game?
you might be.
I probably am.
But you can
All right.
develop a contact, but you could read about how to develop a contact.
Yeah.
Unless
So
you,
I'll have to read further.
that's okay. I just kind of breached the idea, and Bartleby and I kind of went through a example really of how that works. Okay, so you are in Davokar, and lots of activity happens after the abomination is killed. It is drugged by a team of men to the edge and lit on fire. Bodies are gathered and put to rest per their social requirements. And night falls, and everyone eventually rests besides the Wrath Guards. I assume that Gutorm would sleep in the stables.
Yeah, he sticks to the stables.
Okay. And how about Lazarus? Do you sleep with the barbarians, or do you do you get a tent in the pilgrim village?
Yeah, I would go to the Pilgrim Village.
Okay. And how about Lasker? Would you follow Lazarus in the pilgrim village, or would you stay with
Mm,
the barbarian clans, as is your style, or perhaps stay with your people?
I would do both if I could be in both places, but I guess for the first night, I'll go to the Thingstead and plant a tent somewhere there, or just find a corner in one of those long houses.
Or activate the map. How about Verama? I assume she would stay at the Thingstead.
Where could be the most, besides sleeping with the goblin? Where would be the most? I mean, she slept in the longhouse before, but right? I think is that the
Right. So longhouse or the Thingstead, like in a tent, or rent a caravan, or sleep with the barbarians who are essentially make up the whole Thingstead. I imagine if she took a liking to Gutorm, she could go to the stables, or she could go to the stables if that's her what she would normally do. Um, she could surely stay in the Pilgrim Village if she felt as a barbarian that she would stay among the Ambrians. Those are kind of her three choices.
she'd go with the barbarians.
Right, in a Thingstead. Okay. So what happens in the morning is Gutorm is asleep in the stable, maybe in the horse, or even next to a donkey or a warm horse. And Herrick, the Wrathguard, kicks him awake like the bottom of his shoe. Goblin, wake up now. Wake up, Archer.
Well, what?
Come now. The High Chieftain wishes words with you.
I kind of stumble on my feet, trying to grab my bow and my equipment, and kind of jumps a little bit 1 foot out to get some of the stuff on me. And
Yeah, he kind of waits there and says,
yeah,
bring your
what's going on?
Ah, the High
I'm
Chieftain.
finished cleaning, and
Yeah, High Chieftain just wants to give you words about last night. Bring your kit and your bow. That's a good idea. Be presentable. And he walks you out of the barracks.
I kind of spit in my hand and kind of clean my face, and yeah.
You got hay stuck everywhere.
Yeah.
Herrick is a Gutorm would know that Herrick as a Wrathguard is just a little bit different, a little bit more friendly, a little bit more jovial, and he kind of reaches over and starts picking out hay out of you because you're little. I mean, he just looks like Goblin. You can't go in front of the High Chieftain like that. And he starts to try to like clean you up a little bit, get it out of your ears, and helps you out, brushes you down a little bit, almost hits you hard enough where you kind of fall on the ground.
I mean, I could clean myself in some in a bucket of water right there.
No, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, Goblin. You look perfect. Starts, walking out of the stables with you. The other members of the group are also woken up by Wrathguards. Eladin finds Verama and Lascar and wakes them up too. Come now, kin. The High Chieftain wishes words with you. Ianid's the one you met in the forest, the scout leader or leader of that threesome that came that gave you aid, and so he knows you, knows what you look like, and he wakes both Barama and Lascar up to see the High Chieftain because he wishes words. What does
Yened
Baram-
is the Odav one.
Ianid is the Odav, yes.
Are the Odavs reputed for hunting marlit, the marlit beast, to make camouflage cloaks?
Odavs are among the tribes. Odavs, depending on your viewpoint, have made a position and have enriched themselves by
Yeah, but are they the
Ian-
one who make chameleon cloaks?
yes, but
Would I be aware of that?
I think you would. You would also know that as a Wrathguard, Ianid is clanless. Once he puts on the
Right.
armor of the Wrathguard, he is no longer clan until he leaves that position. So although I describe him as an Odav, and that's his upbringing and background, he's a Wrathguard, which is a little bit different. He only right now his allegiance is to the High Chieftain.
Lascar will stand up, not saying a word, and comply.
Okay.
Very naturally, without even thinking about being summoned, or like there's no like conflict of authority or whatnot. He's just someone calls him. He goes.
Um,
He can possibly
Ianid
have
collects.
yeah.
Ianid collects Lascar and then finds Verama sleeping either in a wagon that she's rented or a tent and straw mat, and wakes her up too and tells her that the High Chieftain wishes words.
Yeah, Rama is just thinking, oh, the game is up. She's in trouble. She's been
She's in
what? Guilty conscience. So she will just kind of sheepishly just get ready quickly and go.
Yeah, and then Ianid looks at you and goes, "You know where that damnable Ambrian is? Your other, the Ambrian that came with you out of the forest.
I haven't seen him, no. Yeah, I think I
He's
heard
not
his
sleeping.
I think I can feel the giant weight of his head, his massive head somewhere in that direction, and I'll point over to the Ambrian section. Because he
Yeah,
was
I'm pretty sure he
that
stayed
was
at the pilgrim camp.
that was Joe's character when he quote unquote killed the thing, right? Is that the
Well, he did kill it.
Oh, he did kill it, but yeah, right. Okay,
He
Okay.
did land the killing blow. So technically
Right.
speaking,
Yeah. Well, I know better than
Ianid shakes his head and drags you two to the pilgrim camp, and he looks around. He finds a man who asks around and eventually finds where Lazarus would be sleeping. Is Lazarus a late sleeper or is an early riser?
He's an early riser.
Do you think he's awake before this? It's just sunlight, like it's just dawn. The sun
Mm,
is just peeking over the tops of the trees of Davokar.
He's probably still in his bedroll and sleeping bag, but awake.
Okay. Yeah. Enid like flips open your tent flap and yells in there, Ambrian, come now. The High
Request
Chieftain.
permission to enter before you talk to me.
Yeah, he just has his head in there and he just shakes his head. He goes, Ambrian, I'm a Wrathguard. I go wherever I damn well please. The High Chieftain whispers words about your actions last night.
Oh, he wishes to give me an award?
Well, he wishes to perhaps give you kind words about it, but you could stay in bed if you want, you know.
I'm even more famous than I was before. All right, I'll come along.
Right. So he grabs it. He kind of waits out there and he looks at last guard Verama. He probably shakes his head a little bit, just a small movement as a Wrath guard.
You
And
look in, you kind of notice that he's like primping himself. He's like manscaping a little bit.
you come out looking good.
Yeah.
I think Laska, when he sees the Lazarus's composure and overall behavior, he thinks of him as kindly as a child who eager, eager to compete, eager to prove himself, eager for rewards, just an eager, innocent heart.
That's very generous of you. I think Verama would probably think to herself that he would remind her of a Davokarian peacock. Very rare in the forests. I've heard of them and I've seen one once. They're very rare and yeah. Very pretty.
So Enid grabs the three of you and starts moving across the plain. He eventually sees Herrick and Gutorm, and he hands. As you're kind of standing there, you're a fair ways distance from the longhouse or from the stronghold. I mean, and you can see across the distance as there's a mass of people right in front of the main doors, Templars and some Ambrian hunters, and there seems to be a bit of commotion. And Enid comes up to Herrick and he goes, "What's going on?" And Herrick kind of shrugs his shoulders and he goes, "Well, take these three with the goblin to see the High Chieftain. You might want to go by the side door." And Herrick nods and he collects Verama, Laskar, and Lazarus with the goblin Gutorm. They do not collect the ogre Kandu. For some reason, they can't find him as big as he is. And you march, or he brings you around kind of the side of the longhouse of the stronghold, and you do see this group of people, and you hear some mutterings, "Damn elves, we got to hunt them down, bastard evils," and you kind of skirt that kind of commotion in the front. There's maybe one Wrathguard out there. Arona, the disfigured mute woman, is kind of standing there stoically, and this group of Templars and hunters, Ambrian hunters, are around her. But you skirt that kind of front door and that mass of people in the front door. And Herrick takes you to these kind of barn doors that are set in the ground, almost like your basement doors. And he opens these big wooden doors, and he goes down these couple of steps. After the group comes in, he kind of closes the doors, and you go through an stone archway, and you notice there's sconces for torches, and there's two Wrathguards sentinel at this kind of side door. No one's going to come in this side door all by themselves. There's these two Wrathguards standing guard there, and Herrick nods at him and looks at him and says, this group at the High Chieftain wishes words with. And the guards nod, and you kind of walk up. You go up another set of stairs, they get back to that first level. And you kind of can see to the left and the right that this under part of the stronghold is probably storage, other kind of rooms, but you don't really get a lot of good look down there because you're following Herrick. as quickly as possible. You go up these stone steps to get back to the first level, and eventually start coming down this long hall, and you see this archway that leads into the main room of the stronghold. In that main room, there's again some degree of commotion, and you immediately hear kind of heightened words, and Herrick gets to the archway, and you see Farvan, who's the first guard of the Wrath Guards there. You see a Ambrian in a black cloak sitting on a stool with his leg kind of propped up out. And then you see 2 Templars. Farvan can see Herrick as he shows himself in the archway, and he makes this little signal with his hand. And Herrick stops and looks back at you and says, "We must wait here for a moment." And he's kind of standing sideways so you can see out into that main stronghold room. And you see Therabad, the High Chief, sitting in his throne, and down a couple steps is the Archwitch Yeletta. You hear the Blackcloak telling this story about how his Blackcloak group was attacked by this Elven warband. Surely this Elven warband is coming here, or perhaps the Arch of the Oldavs. There were many of them, and they killed all of us. At the same time, one of the Templars' voice rises up, and he says, "We must meet this evil and destroy it." And the High Chieftain kind of tries to calm him down and says, "These are barbarian lands. We will deal with it." And the Templar disagrees with him, like there's 2 Templars there. And he kind of yells out that we are free to act. This place is a sanctuary. We are free to go to our Ambrian people and make this right wrong. At which point the High Chieftain kind of interrupts and doesn't address the Templar and looks at the first guard, Farvan, and says, "How many Wrath Guards can we spare?" And Farvan shakes his head and says, "High Chieftain, we lost many last night. The others are repairing the alarms. You sent that group to the Bayagas regarding the Black Plague they're dealing with out of the forest in the center. And you sent some men to the plains to determine why the witches are not responding. I have maybe 2 to send." And the High Chieftain goes, "Which ones?" And he goes, "Well, I would send Herrick and Arona." You hear Herrick that's standing there go, "Sons of a bitch," right next to you under his voice, like, "Fuck me." And the High Chieftain looks at the first guard out there and kind of says, "Arona, are you sure that's a good idea?" And the first guard, Farvan, says, "High Chieftain, if I chose one Wrath Guard to guard the gate, it would be Arona. If I chose one Wrath Guard to guard your person, it would be Arona." And he goes, "If I chose," and the High Chief puts up his hands. "Yes, I understand." And the Templar looks at the first guard, Farvan, and the High Chieftain and says, "We are ready. We have 8 Templars and twice as many hunters. We're not wait at the gates for the Wrath Guards. Make sure they meet us there quickly." And the Templar turns around, grabs the man off the stool wearing a black cloak, and kind of starts moving out. You see the man in the black cloak kind of dragging his one leg behind him, and the Templars leave with the black cloak. And Herrick looks in there, and Farvan gives him a wave to bring in the group. And he looks at you and he goes, "This looks like it's going to be a damn mess." And so he brings out all of you into the main room. Farvan looks at Herrick and says, "Herrick, find Arona, meet these Templars and the hunters, and go with them to find this Elven group before a mess is made." And Herrick nods and looks at Gutorm and says, "Time to go to work, Goblin. But I'll see you when I get back." And then he promptly leaves. I would like Laskar and Verama to make a cunning roll. Yeah, so Lascar, when you're listening to this story, especially from this Ambrian in a black cloak, which you would probably know as a blackguard or a black cloak, there's something off. The way he describes the Elven group or describes them as a war band, the words he uses, the tactics he talks about, his whole group was killed and only he survived, just doesn't add up to you. There's something off about his story. Verama, you feel that that's possible. The only thing is that Elven Warband hasn't really been seen for quite some time, and it catches you by surprise. I'd have Lazarus and Glutorm make a vigilant roll.
Do I have to target my character?
No, you can just roll. You can just roll vigilant. You should be able to just roll vigilant straight up by
Oh
hitting
yeah,
vigilant.
yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Holy shit.
Shit.
Gutorm, as they leave, the Templars and the Blackguard stomping out of the main hall of the stronghold, you feel that the Blackguard is definitely injured and has probably suffered from during the battle, that his wounds are real, and that in that sense, everything seems to add up. Lazarus, you know he's lying. Flat out, he's nearly not in. He may be a little bit injured, but the way he drags his legs, there's one leg that he definitely isn't that injured. In fact, you would probably surmise that he's minorly injured and he's lying to a fair extent regarding the damage he's taken as he's led out with the Templar. You all are kind of standing there, and the High Chieftain is looking down for a minute. The Archwitch Ioletta, which you've never met, is standing there. It's really probably hard to tell which one of them is more imposing. The High Chieftain's up on his chair that's a couple steps above you, and surely that's imposing to be in front of the High Chieftain, whether you're barbarian or Ambrian. But the stories about the Archwitch Ioletta, who's a much smaller figure and down a couple feet from him, doesn't really mean that she's any less impressive. The High Chieftain eventually raises his head and looks at each of you and says, the Goblin Gutorm. That was a mighty shot you made against the abomination that crawled up out of the abyss.
Gutum kind of mumbles to himself at first. I thought had done something wrong, but thank you.
Wrong. Phew. Not many goblins are up on top of the stables and make an arrow shot like that. It was a mighty fine shot. Anyone would be proud of that. He looks over at Lascar and says, "Brother, you had good action against the abomination. You displayed everything that a barbarian are built to be. How long have you been this far south?"
Oh, it's my first time, and a pleasure to be at your home, brother. I've heard great stories of your deeds, and I'm glad to be at your side today.
Now, for barbarians, just for the barbarians in the crew, you would know another barbarian's clan just by their dress. Different weave, little things on them. And so you could hide where you were from, but it would take, in the winter when you're wearing cloaks. But as soon as you talk, perhaps you would have to learn a slightly different accent to pass yourself off of. So the High Chieftain obviously knows where Lascar and Verama are from. His eyes slide over Verama. They just pause briefly, but he doesn't say anything to Verama. eyes slide under his sisterkin. He nods a little bit, and then he moves towards the Ambrian Lazarus. Verama would see a odd sort of movement with the Archwitch Yoletta, and she would understand that whatever Verama did during that battle is not something that the High Chieftain is going to call her out for many reasons. But Verama would know that he knows what the High Witch, Archwitch Yoletta, and Ephraimah think that she did during that battle. It's just not something he's going to mention. And he looks at the Ambrian Lazarus and says, "Not many Ambrians put down a abomination like that. That was a mighty fine sword strike, although a little bit of theatrics there at the end."
Well, I'm glad I could be here at the right time.
Well, Carvosi is with gratitude, Ambrian, for you being there and fighting among us.
All right, I'll step forward for my reward.
He kind of laughs. Farvan is there too, the Witch Guard, the Wrath Guard, and he doesn't mind you coming a certain distance from the High Chieftain, but he's going to cut you off at certain time. As you're moving forward, Yoletta interrupts this whole kind of process where the High Chieftain is thanking you for your activity, and she interrupts, and you can hear her turn to the High Chieftain and then say, "This will end badly, High Chieftain. It will push matters to the break. Those Templars and the Hunters. There's been no Elven warband this far south, let alone against Carvosi in two centuries, 200 years." And the High Chieftain looks at him, and you see him kind of grimace, and then he looks at all of you and he says, "You have come from the out recently. I know what happened in the forest with the forest worm. Did you see evidence of a warband or Blackcloaks?"
Have not.
Yeah.
Nothing of the like, High Chieftain.
He goes, "Well, I will send Wrathguards to intercept." He looks at the Yoletta, and the Archwitch says, "No, you cannot send another group of Wrathguards. We don't have enough, and it will look as if we're taking sides." And then she turns and looks at all of you, and she gets this little quirky look on her face, and she goes, "Look at them, this group. There's an Ambrian and a Goblin. They are varied. Send them instead. Perhaps they are unaligned." And the High Chieftain kind of looks at her, and you see him thinking a little bit. And then he looks at each of you and says, "Are you willing to help Carvosti again? Brother Bayegan, will you do this deed for Carvosti and your High Chieftain?"
Surely I will. That's not
He
why
looks
I
at-
came, but
Okay.
it's. I had too many questions. I came with a troubled heart and a troubled mind. I wasn't wishing to go so soon, but as soon as I'm back, I have many questions for you all.
Well, if this is successful, just like last night, Carvosti will be in your debt.
What I'm
And you could
thinking right now is that elves don't do things randomly, and if they appear somewhere, they have a reason to be there. They were certainly looking for something on an errand of their own, or they were provoked, or somehow attracted there for their own reasons.
Now, is Lascar thinking this in his head, or is he kind of
Allowed.
aloud? Yeah, the High Chieftain Thereban will look at you and, "Yes, I agree. We have not had an envoy or a warband or much contact with the elves. Surely the prince hasn't come. That was 400 or 500 years ago. They do not come to the plain of Carvosi. And so this is troubling. Why were they here, a group of that nature? I'm not even certain if there is one there." but it needs to be handled. He looks at his sister, Verama, and asks the same questions. Will you go with your brother Bayegan and do this deed for Carvosi? We would be in your debt, sister.
Verona would not say anything for just a moment, and then she would say, yes. Laskar is a warrior, and he helped save me at my time when I was almost fallen. Then she'll look at the others and say, so she looks at the other, an Ambry and a goblin, and say, and they could use a barbarian witch's wisdom and insight as well, lest they make matters worse.
Yeah, he looks at you like the goblin and the Ambrian have already decided to go. And they must make their own choice, sister. But you would
Oh, I
be
thought they-
helpful.
Wait, have they gone? Have they decided they're going to go
No,
already or
he
not?
hasn't talked. He hasn't
Oh,
asked them directly yet.
Oh, okay. I would just say yes, Laskar. Basically, the long and the short of it, that Laskar had saved me, and yeah, he could use my guidance in the not that he needs it, but two of us barbarian tribes united are unstoppable.
Okay. The High Chieftain turns to the goblin Gutorm and says, Archer, would you lend us your bow again? We would be in your debt, and barbarians hold their debts high.
Yeah, I mean, as the chieftain looks over to Gutom, Gutom takes a little like a sidestep behind the taller guy in front of him, and he leans out and points at himself and me.
Surely
You want me to help? But who's gonna clean the stables?
They will wait for Herrick to return. I've heard what you did on the training grounds. Your stable cleaning for the week is done, and perhaps you are not meant to be a stable cleaner.
And we kind of see Gutom is kind of almost a smile and straightening his back and steps forward. Yes, I can help.
Good then. But he looks at Lazarus, that he pauses a little bit. You see him get this little smile on his face. And how about you, Ambrian? Do you believe what the Blackcloaks said? Is your brother telling the truth?
I have my doubts, certainly.
And what would it take for you to lend your arm to Carvosi?
Oh, just a plot of land.
Plot of land. He laughs a little bit. In barbarian land, Ambrian, how long would you hold that land?
Oh, I don't know. I was going to build a summer home here.
He shakes his head. You let him make a little noise in her throat, and he goes, spoken like an Ambrian, but I would see what I could do for you. Or at least point you in the right direction, Lazarus, Ambrian.
Just nods.
Yoletta, after everyone agrees, Yoletta looks at the High Chieftain. He goes, Therabin, they cannot be seen. I will take him by the stair. And you see this look of the High Chieftain's face goes completely blank. He goes, are you certain that that is necessary? And Yoletta looks at him and shakes her head. They cannot be seen leaving the front archway. We will have to take him down the stair. And then she turns, he nods an assent, and the arch witch looks at all of you and says, gather your things and make your kit ready. Come by one or two to the Arch of the Witches, and we will take you out of Carvosti.
Do you mean that do you mean that Ambria isn't to be aware of our mission?
And the High Chieftain says, no. I wish you to get there before them and figure out what is happening, and then take the action that you feel is right. You must beat the other group to this Elven site where the battle and the group is, and determine what the truth is. I wish you to go in advance and try to beat them there. Perhaps defray animosity or worsening. If the elves are completely killed, then war can come and we will be torn. Ambrian versus elves. It will be bad for all of us. Is that understood?
Didn't you send Irana and Herrick as well there?
Yeah,
Are
but
they aware for a
Arona
meeting?
and Herrick, Arona and Herrick is going with the Templars and the Hunter group.
Do they
He
know
feel
about us?
no. Any other questions? He looks at all of you. We would be greatly in your debt. And war is war, which is something I would rather not occur. Okay.
It
Do
may
you
be.
all go ahead, Ad?
Mike just goes, "Wah," as if to answer. Yeah.
Right.
I
Lascar,
keep forgetting about my card.
Lascar, did you have something to say?
No, I think I refrain. I think Laska wants some kind of I don't know what would be the custom if I don't think it would be called a blessing or something.
Oh,
I think he wants to be hugged by the mother witch, or maybe he wants her to hold her weapons, or I don't know. He needs some kind of like spiritual
yeah,
kind of like.
I think he would maybe do that or consider that. There is something he would consider that Byagan witches would do for him right before the eve of battle. And that may be something that he entertains when he regroups with the witches at the arch.
Okay, after being back.
Well, the witches are going to take you down the stair.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, both you don't quite, no one knows what the stair is, but you're seemingly going by some secret exit of Carvosti. That's the sense you get. And the witches are
Love
going
it.
to take you down the stair personally.
Let's go.
Does Lazarus have anything to say before leaving?
No.
How about the Goblin Gutorm?
No.
Okay. Do you do anything specific before you go to the witch's entrance in the escarpment of Carvosti?
I do not.
Laskar would offer his forearm and make a big handshake with the chieftain if possible.
Yeah, I think the High Chieftain would get up out of his throne and walk down and perhaps do that kind of send off, at least with his barbarian brother Lascar. He doesn't do that kind of physical thing with Verama. He knows she's a witch and there's propriety involved, even as a High Chieftain with any witch. And he would probably just nod, stand in front of her and nod. And then he would offer his hand to Lazarus and Gutorm if they would take it. They could mimic the barbarian greeting, like, arm in arm, or they could do their own greeting, right?
For Guttorm, I think it's going to be quite awkward because he's not used to this, so it's going to be that sloppy hand shake.
Yes, the High Chieftain may like fix it for you, like
Yeah.
this, Gutorm, like this.
Okay. And I kind of tighten the grip and do a proper shake.
Very good. Lazarus, you take his arm too. Do anything else specific?
I mimic. I don't
Okay.
touch him. You can tell like I'm a little bit hesitant.
Okay. Reasonable. Do any of the characters, do you do anything in preparation of meeting the witches, or are you all kind of set and you just kind of go in ones and twos? Is there anything specific you would do before, in the 10, 15 minutes before you assemble at the archway to the witches' quarters?
I would inquire also about if we need mounts.
No. You will need to walk through the forest. No mounts can go down the stairs.
Okay. Well, I would ask them to take care of my newly acquired.
Yeah. I think those arrangements would be easily made.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Any of the others?
Lascar was
Go ahead.
on the lookout for an extra bolas and extra throwing axe, so he could possibly ask, I don't know, a guard there, a rat guard.
Yeah, the
whoever.
first guard Farvin is there, and if Lascar, he is present, and I think Lascar would ask the first guard if for extra weapons, and I think that would be easily accomplished, where he would give a throwing axe and the extra bolas.
I pay the price if he implies that I have to pay. You
Yeah,
know?
I think it's more like out of the armory. You are presently doing a deed for the High Chieftain of Theraben. The reason barbarians do not pay to eat at the Longhouse in the Thingstead is because Theraben pays for their meals. It's part of like tithing, right? Part like he's hosting them in his essentially domain, and so meals for barbarians are free, whereas Ambrians have to pay a small amount.
Yeah, so I think Lascar would put it in a way, it's sort of like saying we Lascar, but as we barbarian need an extra bolas and throwing axe.
Yeah, the first guard would probably reach behind his back and pull. He's got two throwing axes tucked in at a cross on his back. He'd probably pull one out of his back and hand it to you, and say, "I will have one sent, Lascar. Someone will arrive at the antechamber to the witches and bring your bolus. I will either get it myself or one of the other wrath guards will bring it."
Appreciate that, brother. See you very soon.
Is there any place Gutom could see if we could find a longbow he could afford, or I don't know if he even can afford that, but
Yeah, just like Lascar, once you fall under High Chieftain's request, if Gutorm made the request for a longbow, then First Guard Farvin would find you one. It obviously the Wrath Guards have longbows, and this is an important mission that you are undertaking for the High Chieftain, and he would find you a longbow. There's probably an armory within the stronghold itself. As you guys go back out the same way, Farvin would probably pick up Lascar's bolus and a longbow for Gutorm.
yeah,
I-
because you
I
kind of
would-
see,
I-
you kind of, sorry,
Go ahead.
yeah, you kind of see just Gutom showing his kind of makeshift, homemade little short bow with this little sad face, and I think I need some improvement on my bow before a mission like this.
Yeah, First Guard Farvin would look at it, and then in common barbarian fashion, he'd look right at the goblin Gutorm, and he would say, "It would seem to me that bow shoots plenty fine on its own, goblin. I watched that arrow hit the abomination. But I will get you a longbow."
A longbow
Perhaps you
is
keep
a longbow is very long. Huh?
right, like tall.
It's called long for a reason. It's longer than you.
He may
Yeah,
have to,
I have to do it against the side, like shoot it sideways.
or grounds the bottom of the bow in the ground, and he puts his foot on the bottom and pulls it that way. Lazarus.
I would also request a missile weapon. Is there, in game terms, is there crossbows and longbows?
Yeah, there are
Yes.
crossbows.
I was just looking
And
at them. Like,
do they have the same mechanic, basically?
No, they load. It's an action to load them,
it's a move action to reload.
right? And
A
so
move
they're
action.
slow. Yeah, they're slower. You got to use a full move action to
Okay.
load them.
And is there heavy and light, or just a standard
There is
crossbow?
there's a heavy called an arbalest. That's worth
What's the
40
damage?
Tower. It's a heavy Ambrian crossbow.
And what's the
It's
damage?
1d10 plus 1.
Okay.
And a
I
regular
would
crossbow. And a regular crossbow is 1d10.
I would request a heavy crossbow.
Okay. Do you need help pulling that onto your?
Shouldn't.
Okay. Yeah, you can pull those onto your sheet and equip them.
That would be under the regular,
Yeah, I'm
not
looking under.
the advanced guide, right?
It's under items. Should be under.
I found it.
Symbaroum. Yeah, Symbaroum items and weapons.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And Gutorm can pull a longbow over. All right, then I guess we're set. Correct.
Could I take an arbalest as well? And
Sure.
and a halberd?
I think you could take a loner out of the armory within the stronghold.
Well,
Like this is the
either
type of
way,
mission
like
it is.
yeah, and either way, if I use one of those, like I'm kind of hopeless, but something to do in a combat if I need to.
Yeah, Farvin would kind of look at you, Verama, the witch, when you ask for like a heavy crossbow and a halberd, and he has this little look across his face, like. Then he would probably slowly like pick up the heavy crossbow and like hand it over to you with both hands, like like he's handing over a snake that's going to strike you, but very, very mildly. And then after you take that, he'd grab the halberd and just look up at it for a minute, as thinking to himself, "What the hell is this witch going to do with the halberd?"
Yeah.
And then he hands it over.
You know what? I go psych, and I give the arbalest back because that's so out of character. I would just take the halberd because it's basically like a spear to me.
Right. Okay.
So just the arbalest.
All right.
Or, sorry, just the halberd, not the arbalest.
Okay.
And I meant to make sure I had the damage right, because in my twin attack ability, it says I can make 2 attacks, and one is a single-handed weapon, and then there's a short weapon in the other hand. So
Right.
it says 1d8 and 1d6, but am I supposed to do 1d8 plus 1 and 1d6 plus 1?
What's the +1 for?
I guess
Iron
it's the
Fist.
weapon. It's because of the weapon.
I wanted to ask about this myself because can I use the twin attack with 2 daggers?
Yeah.
Yes.
So would that be like a 1d6 and a 1d4 then instead
Yes.
of d8 and d6? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, cool.
yeah, unless you have, unless you get the dagger, whatever, that increases your weapon damage.
Yeah.
Your
You don't
offhand
make it. You don't make it 1d6 plus 1d6 for each shot.
I would
Is it
think so.
1d6 plus 1d6 for both shorts?
Yeah.
I mean, that's reasonable, I think.
I
That
guess.
makes sense
I
to
guess
me.
so.
I think that would be better because a 1d4 really isn't going to get past much.
Because 1d4 is a punch. Huh?
Right. So I think
Yeah.
for Gutorm, 1d6 plus 1d6 for 2 daggers is reasonable.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So each of you, either in ones or twos, go to the archway and the antechamber of the witch's Holdra. and there's a couple witches standing there. You know Ephronia, you know the Archwitch Yoletta. There's another witch there you haven't met, and another one. And they're all holding black swaths of fabric in the archway of there. And the Archwitch Yoletta looks at everyone and says, "We must blindfold you to take you down the stairs." And she nods to Ephronia and the other witches, and one of them comes up to Lascar and looks at Lascar and says, "Are you ready, brother? I will put your blindfold on and I will take you down the stair myself."
I'm always ready.
So she lashes over and puts the blindfold on Lascar, and then they do the same to Gutorm. The male witch comes up to Gutorm and looks at him and says, "Goblin, I must put this blindfold on you. You cannot go down the stairs and see the passage. Are you ready?"
I'm ready.
He kind of ties it on you, double knots it on the back, and make sure it covers your eye because you're a goblin and you probably can't be trusted. Puts it on his watch.
They're shifty, those little guys.
Right. Ephronia comes over to Lazarus and says, "Ambrian, duck down for me a little bit. You're damn too tall, so I can put this blindfold on." And she goes
Your
to put
secret
the blind.
stays with me. No need for a blindfold.
You cannot go down the stairs, Ambrian, without a blindfold. She goes
So
to put it on,
Lazarus-
but you stop her to
Lazarus
put it.
sighs.
Right. So she puts the blindfold on, and then the Archwitch of the Holdra, Yoletta, looks at Verama and says, "Sister, it is your choice. You are free to go down the stairs with your eyes open, but it is a secret that you must guard against all temptation and torture. If it is not a secret you think you can hold, then you should go down with your eyes closed, but I leave that decision to you." And she holds out the blindfold to Verama.
I'll take the blindfold and I'll hold it in my hand. How can I resist this? This is gonna be cool.
All right. The
I
next
don't
thing
say
you
that, but
right, and then the Archwitch takes some warm beeswax and presses it into goes to press it into Verama's ears, and she says, you may be able to see as we go down the stairs, but you cannot hear what's in the darkness." And she pushes the wax into your ears to deaden your sound. The other witches do that to each of the others, Lascar, Lazarus, and the goblin Gutorm. The female witch for Lascar pushes the wax in his ears, and then she grabs his hand and folds it in together, finger by finger by finger, and takes his hand right before she presses in the wax. She whispers to him, I will guard you, brother. You will make it down the stairs." And she grabs your hand and holds it tightly. Goblin Gutorm.
At this point, I think Lascars has a flash of his childhood with his sister, which is the last person he actually years ago hold the hands off like that in this very manner. And he thinks for a moment he's walking at his sister's side with blindfolded and with his ear tucked like that. He's transported just for a moment somewhere else and suddenly realizes that he's not there, but he had this moment.
Yeah, she can't see your eyes, and I don't think that she could see him go that place because your eyes are covered. That's a personal moment for Lascar that the witch doesn't see, and so he doesn't really have to roll a discreet test to hide that. If she could see his eyes, it would be different, but I think she can't see it. And when she grabs his hand, maybe she could feel him hold it tight, but to her, going down the stairs is a dangerous thing. She also puts her own wax in. The other characters, Lazarus, Ephraniah's soft hands put her wax in your ears, but she doesn't grab your hand. She grabs you right behind the elbow because you're an Ambrian. So you feel her hard grip right above your elbow, and she just holds you right there. The male witch does the same to the goblin Gutorm and grabs him by the shoulder because he's much shorter, or he probably reaches around and you feel his fingers around your neck, lightly across your shoulder to the other side, like he's holding his son or someone smaller. But you feel it. Maybe his fingers kind of curl in around your clavicle, and they hold you that way. And then Verama, who can see, Yoletta leads them out, lights a torch, and Verama, who can see the whole thing, and then each of the witch and their respective character walk through the antechamber and into the witch's main chambers. Go ahead.
I think as soon as Lascar just comes back to the present moment, he realizes that he has forgotten to track his way, like as a kind of like a hunter instincts. He would try to memorize everything around him, his environment and all that, the path he takes and stuff. So he will begin to count the steps, have a feel for the humidity,
Sure.
stuff like that, just to make a and taking into account the fact that he was away for like 15 seconds or something to add up to the equation.
Now, does Lazarus try to keep his way as a pathfinder? Try to memorize how they're going?
I would, and I would try to be the last person in line.
Yeah, he doesn't have a choice. He's being led.
Right, but what I'm saying is there multiple groups, or is it just in one line?
It's just you and the four witches, and so it's Yoletta, Verama, the three witches who are guiding you, and each of the company members. There's no one else there.
Okay. But I would for sure be, as a pathfinder, and I would even try to peek from the blindfold.
Okay, we're gonna make that roll then.
Oh,
Gutorm, would you try to figure your way out? Peek out of the blindfold as you're going down?
No, Gutorm is like having these loud eating noises. Some of you who can hear, who doesn't have wax in there, can hear them. So he's just snacking on some bugs he has in this little pouch on his way out.
Yeah, luckily no one can hear him snacking on the bugs. I think the male witch who's leading him down just kind of looks down and watches them because he can see them. Gutorm can't really see, but he probably knows where the bugs are in his pocket. But he can hear it now that he has wax. It just echoes in his head. But no one else is really going to hear him eat bugs. And the only one who's going to see it are probably the witches, but they're much too busy. So Yoletta goes, lights a torch, and Verama comes behind her, and then it's Lascar, Lazarus, and Gutorm. Now you don't know your direction. You can kind of hear there's people in front or behind you in some degree, and you take rights and lefts and rights and lefts and rights and lefts and rights and lefts. Go down, go up, go around, and each of you realize, except for Verama, that you're being led in circles a little bit. And then you notice that you start to descend and it gets cold. And the darkness, whereas before the blackness, you can maybe see edge of light or the torchlight around the edges, or you can kind of get a sense of light. Then the darkness just descends on you. It's like this heavy, wet cloak that just gets dumped over the top of you. You lose all sight. It's completely pitch black, and you're just heading down, and it gets colder and colder. Verama, who has their eyes open, is watching all this as Yoletta is leading them around, and essentially they stay for like 10 minutes in the top, just going out of rooms and in the rooms, downstairs, upstairs, right the stairs. And she knows that Yoletta is trying to confuse the other players, even though Verama will know how to go up and down, and even as they come out, will know where they come out. But she has faith that Verama would keep that secret against all temptation and torture. Eventually, they come to this ancient stairway that's uneven stairs, and they start heading down. The witches who are holding each character's grip tightens. Lascar can feel Ephraim, the female witch that's with them, grip tighten on, and she's holding his hand as tight as possible as that darkness descends. Lazarus can feel the grip on his arm tighten, and Gutorm can feel the fingers that are close to his clavicle just kind of dig in. This is a sense they feel of not necessarily fear, but some degree of anxiety, even as the witches descend this part. Each of you said you might take your blindfold off. And so if you're going to do that, I would have Lazarus make a cunning check at -3.
I wouldn't
First.
take it off
Okay,
completely.
you try to peek.
Yeah. So maybe no minus because my cunning is terrible.
Yeah, the minus isn't because you're just peeking. You're being led down the stairs by a witch who's standing at your side, whose job is to
It's
keep
right
you
there.
safe. Right, they're right there. Like their job is to keep the blackness at bay. Whatever is in the darkness that may come out of the darkness, they're not just there to lead you. You get a sense of eventually that they're also there to protect you, and so they're
Okay. So
very vigilant.
so then
Very vigilant.
after we do that circling and I can recognize that it's getting dark and they tighten their grip, then I decide not to move the blindfold.
Okay.
But I'm still kind of counting paces,
Yeah, I would have you
and
make a Pathfinder roll at
and
probably.
elevation, stuff like that.
I would probably make a Pathfinder roll at -1, just because you are a Pathfinder, and so your ability to do that, and that will
Okay.
let you know whether you know the right way up and down.
Okay. Vigilant at -1.
Right. Here you go. I'll tell you what that means at the bottom, but he will know the route. At least if he ever gets back there, he could probably find his way back up. Gutorm, you weren't gonna peek. You were just gonna eat. And
Yep.
Lascar, as you descend into this darkness, as it settles on you like this blanket, as you feel the weight of it and the pitch blackness all around you and the cold, does Lascar try to peek, or does he? No. Okay. Verama, Lascar could make a. Lascar has bushcraft, although he's not a pathfinder. If Lascar wanted to try to know his way, he could make a check it, but it would be at -3. If he doesn't, if he's not going to break that taboo as a barbarian and try to remember it, then he doesn't need to. Oh, okay. And Gutorm could make a cunning roll as if he wouldn't, like if he's not going to track his way, if he's just eating his bug and relying on he doesn't need to make a roll at all. If he wanted to sort of figure his way in and out, he'd have to make a cunning roll at -3.
Gutom really doesn't care.
Okay, good. I thought that's what you said, but I was making sure I didn't miss it there. Verama, you are in the dark with Yoletta, and you feel it. You find the darkness just starts to erode, come in on you, just like tentacles of it almost mist itself, the darkness starts to tease at you as you go down these stairs. You can't really see very far in front of you because Yoletta has the torch, and you see the darkness come in and snuff it out. It goes
Oh.
completely black, and the line halts. You see Yoletta
Oh.
must be
Not good.
hitting stone, and you see the sparks of it one after another trying to relight the torch, and she eventually, you hear some muttering from her, which you know she's doing something with magic.
Okay. One thing I forgot. Did I raise my hand or was that? Oh, that's somebody else.
Yeah, Gutorm, you had a question?
Yeah, I was. This is just a game question. Goblins in this game, I've been reading about them, but are they nocturnal or something like that, or are they
Yeah,
just
they have better sight if
in darkness?
right.
Okay. Yeah.
If you didn't have your blindfold on, you could see further.
Yeah.
But Verama, you hear her lighting that torch. She lights one of them. Eventually, it gutters back, and the darkness kind of gets pushed back. And then she lights a second one, and she holds it out to you.
Okay, I'll take it. One thing I forgot to ask was, can Omero, my magpie, could he have come with us, or would I have had to release him and get him to meet us outside?
No, I think. Well, that's up to you. If you think you could make a call in the dark, if you could make a call or a whistling call, I would have you roll to see if you're, or it could be just on your shoulder, like, or you are
Okay.
holding it as you go into the dark.
Yeah, he's just on my shoulder.
Okay. Verama takes the torch.
Maybe he'd probably try to pick one of the bugs out of the goblin's hand when he's not looking. Like maybe kind of like gets on his shoulder, like distracts him, and then when the goblin goes like this, he jumps on the other shoulder. And then when he looks this way, then he tries to jump down and peck one of the bugs out of his hand.
Hops out. Yeah, hops back and forth. It probably does that while they're making those turns, but once it gets dark, I think it would hop back on and not leave you. Like it would get close to your neck. It's like sucked in close. Even the bird knows Verama would see it in the darkness. There's something out there, something moving. She may see some faces. She may see some forms. Some of them are small. Some of them are huge. And they come in and out of that darkness, and then she looks back because everyone else is behind her, and she realizes she can see Yoletta's mouth moving. When she hands her the torch, Yoletta's mouth is moving, and she realized that Yoletta this whole time is speaking a spell. And then she looks behind her and she sees the three witches that are holding her companions. Their mouths are moving too. They're not, obviously she can't hear any sound out of them, but their mouths are all moving, and you see the darkness back. And you eventually get down to the base of the stairs and out. You let it. Verama sees them come out this huge cavern, and then there's light. The other characters can feel the light on them. They can feel the sun on their skin. Their blindfolds get lighter, and they march out into the forest. They don't just stop right there. They march out probably 30, 35 minutes until they're in the forest itself, in a place where even if you looked up, you probably couldn't see Carvosti. If when they take off the blindfolds of the characters and take out their wax out of their ears, and the characters look out, they're in very dense covering, and so they don't really have bearings of where Carvosi is, except for obviously Verama knows the whole way back and forth, and Lazarus, being a pathfinder, feels that if he knew the landmarks and got back to where he was, he could probably make it back up the stairs on his own. Laskar's a little bit less certain, probably not as precise as Lazarus, but he too figures that if he ever made it into the dark stairs again, he could probably work his way up. It would be tough, but he could probably do it.
At
Once
this
you're
point,
blindfolded.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Try that sometime.
No, go ahead.
at this point, I don't know really why he does that, but Lascar possibly half superstitiously, or I don't know, as a way to connect back with light, or he would just kneel to the ground and grasp a fist of soil and wash his face with it and sniff it and yeah, throw it away.
Yeah, I think in the darkness, that's devoid of life. Like Lascar might have felt that, like that darkness, the heaviness of it. There's no scent. There's no scent of green. There's no scent of ground. There's no scent of soil. It's to a Bayegan that would probably be uncomfortable, because that place is dead space. He would feel walking through it.
Yeah, I think there's something to something possibly a little bit taboo in regard to undergrounds.
Yeah. Do you think that Lascar has a phobia of it, or it's just something he doesn't like?
No phobia, but yeah, dislike, distrust of shadow. The shadow of death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Davokar.
How about Gutorm? They take your 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 blindfold off and take your wax out. Have you run out of bugs, or do you still have some in your pockets?
I have a lot of bugs. I mean, the, the stables, it's a lot of bugs in the stables. I
That's
pick
your
them and
ration.
then, I pick them and then I dry them and maybe I steal some sugar to get some sweet taste on them. So yeah.
Lazarus, do you say anything or do anything as Yoletta has you unbound, takes your blindfolds off and your wax out of your ears?
If I notice the bug situation, I step away from them and kind of give them a dirty look.
Yeah. I see that and I take up the pouch with the bugs and you wanna have some?
And
You wanna have some?
I violently push his pouch away from me.
Oh well, more for me. And you hear him.
The barbarians and the goblin wouldn't realize it because Ambrians surely eat bugs. They came from Albertor starving, and so they ate everything. But Lazarus is privileged, and so maybe they think that's the way all Ambrians are, but they wouldn't necessarily realize that it was coming from privilege necessarily until later. But would Verama say or do anything? She's walked all this way behind Yoletta, carrying her torch, which they eventually put out. She knows the whole stairs and has looked into the darkness, and she definitely saw power and danger within the mountain itself. Maybe even heard a deeper voice from under their feet, this rumbling. Does she say or do anything as they reaching this under?
No, she would just hand the torch back to Yoletta and just say, "Sister," and she would just have a weight off her shoulders because yeah, that was a place without any life. So it's, and for her life, the most important life is plants and trees. So that was just yeah, she'll carry that with her for the rest of her days.
Right, she just planted some seeds on her own. She just went to find and establish her own grove, and she just went to a dead place, all in the same day. Yoletta looks at you and she points kind of in the east and in a particular direction, which those who are used to the forest, definitely Lazarus, but also maybe Lascar, and tells you that there's these two ridges with a furrow. And the Blackguard said that the elves can be found there. That's where they attacked, and that's where they left them. And she gives you kind of directions into the forest and looks at all of you and says, Carvosi, wish you luck. And again, we will be in your debt should this be successful. If not, then It was good to know you, brother and sister.
Lazarus quips back quickly. I need no luck.
Do you say anything in parting?
Yeah, I say thanks,
Laskar?
sister.
No.
Yeah. Verama says, thank you, sister. And just leaves it at that. And what she's really saying is, thanks for leading us through. Thanks for the word of telling us where to go, but also thanks for keeping your mouth shut about certain things. A big thank you.
Yeah, that's a privilege that doesn't need thanks. A witch's business is a witch's business.
Exactly.
Laskar, do you say anything in parting? The witches don't give the same sort of Are you looking for a blessing?
I think Archmother, Grand Sister, would you whisper a few good words to my spear? It needs your support.
So she holds her hands out, Laskar, and she, in her fashion from her clan, they take the weapons from the fighters, hunters, and pray over them or do their thing. Is that what the Bygorns do, or they usually hold their weapons as a witch does the whole person?
Yeah, I would imagine there's something like there's some form of connection. It's an extension of my hunter spirit, you know. It's kind of like the projection of my will to kill, or you know.
So he holds it.
There's something there. So it would like me it would like blessing me, but this part of me, kind of this extension of me.
She would probably grab it and realize that yours, and remember that your clan is a little bit different than hers, and she would perform the same rite, almost to the T, that a Bygorian witch would do, because she is the arch witch and the Holdra. And even the inflection, her voice probably changes. Laskar probably hears it, the pitch, the canter. She takes on the accent of a Bygorian witch as she does it, as opposed to her other clan.
Yeah, Alaska is amazed by that. Reminds him of his sister, and his awe in front of the spiritual, and his love for those mysterious connections the witches can make and have, and his kind of loneliness, and he feels like a knight, possibly like someone who he's has he's serving some form of higher consciousness or something. And at this point he just shake himself off, and just ask, like, roughly, just like a hunter to, a knowledgeable source of information. And then, which what's the catch here? Why send another team?
Yoletta would explain that we cannot be at war with the elves. Otherwise, we will have to pick sides. We must stay in the middle. We must keep the peace or the balance. If war with the elves come, then we have to choose elves or Ambrians, and balance would be destroyed. War with the elves would do none of us any good.
If anything, it just looks like the Embryon are playing our people
That may be
against
true.
the forest.
That may be true, brother. But if you can get there first, then perhaps we can at least manage this time.
My
if we do
spear will know
nothing.
where to strike.
Good. And then the witches would leave. And what I think we're due at the moment, we'll take like a 5-minute break. Because it's been
Yep.
a little
Sure.
bit over an hour and a half. Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and then I'll describe what's going to happen next, okay?
Sounds good.
Uy.
What is the average toughness for a fresh character in this game?
They start with 50 XP. I think they all start at 10 unless they...
I was thinking of the toughness.
Toughness a character or enemy?
Character.
I think they all start at 10. Unless they
Yeah.
have something specific that makes them tougher. The toughness doesn't change a lot. And so if they have robust or if they have exceptional attribute that changes that, then their toughness will change based on those attributes. Some
Yeah.
characters have more, but they typically have an attribute or power that increases them up, and they may have 14 or 15, but it's the attribute that really causes them to do that, or their racial. Most characters like you, Verama, and Lascar have toughness of 10. Other characters, Troll, Ogre, Lascar may have a toughness of 11 for other things. And so it does change based on that.
Yeah.
I don't think any start below 10, unless they take a Bane, or unless they take not a Bane, but I forget what it's called. Unless they take one of those, and it limits their toughness.
In increasing skills, is it 10, 20, 30?
You mean ability?
Yes.
It's 10, 30, 60, isn't it?
I thought it was 10, 20, 30.
Oh, okay.
But it equals, you've paid 60 by the end.
Yeah.
And yes, toughness, I think minimum is 10, but if you have like higher strength or something, it's an average of two things, I think. So, or something like that. Minimum 10.
A quick question regarding undead.
Yes.
If I want to become an undead, my character to become an undead, would that be a thing? After he dies?
Yeah, I've limited it at the moment, but I think we could. I don't expect your need to do anywhere. I'm not opposed to undead.
Okay.
I just limited it as a beginning character.
Sure. Next question then is, are undead immune to corruption?
I would have to look as a character per se. You mean?
The idea would be then for Lascar as an undead. He doesn't think about that at all right now. But me as a player, I'm kind of like imagining Lascar undead going into the Yonder world, looking for Blood Wolf.
Yeah, that's kind of a long view. I'd have to look it up and make sure that because it's a little bit more difficult question. So I'd have to look up.
I know.
Kind of do that. Everyone back.
Yes.
Right.
Whoever's not back,
I might want to do some changes on the character before next session, I think.
Yeah, that's fine. If you find that something's not working, or maybe I would have done this instead or that instead, then you can PM me changes or let me know what those changes. I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, because I was late last time and I had to do everything real quick, and now that I have more time to read and stuff like that, I see different things that could be fun.
Yeah, let you settle your characters a little bit over a couple sessions. Especially if you're newer to the system, or you're not quite sure if that's going to work, or it seems to never come into play. I try to hit people's character things, but for some reason. Lazarus, are you here?
Yep.
Okay. So just to orientate you on the screen for just a second, you'll notice that 2 clocks showed up on the upper right that says before and after of Foundry. Okay, so as opposed to the beginning where it was kind of linear and obviously there's a hook and we played that out. What happens next is truly up to the characters. The decisions they make, what they do, how they do it, success, failure, will determine whether they arrive before the group, at the same time of the group, or after the other group. I don't have it scripted either way. You're trying to beat that group to the elves and find out what's happening, but when you arrive and how you arrive, it really depends on what happens next and what you do with what happens. And so any of those can occur. And I have not pre-decided when you arrive or if you beat them there or if you come after. It's all dependent on the group's decisions. and that's what those clocks are. So if you count down, if more of the before is hit, if you have open spaces, like I filled that 3 spaces, it means you arrived before, and you arrived sometime before. If all those spaces are filled, but none of the after, then you arrive about the same time. If you start going into the after, then you're arriving later than them, and what you encounter will change based on when you arrive. Any questions about that?
So when before is full, you start to fill after.
Right. I fill before up first, and then I
Yeah,
go,
of course.
and I go after.
I understand. Yeah, I'm getting it.
Right.
Each quadrant is each segment is a scene, is what?
Each segment really depends on what you do, what your decisions are about what you meet, how that goes, and so it's not necessarily scene based, but it's also what happens during that scene. Does it take more time? Does it take less time? Do you make up time? And so there's that kind of thing too.
Bird fly distance. What is the straight most distance?
Right. So your Pathfinder or whoever's leading you, it's a couple hours march from Carvosti.
Couple hours.
And so you could, right. And so you're kind of going through half a hex or so, or, that if you want to do it that kind of way, if you're looking at the map, which I probably put you on the map, but that kind of idea. The distance itself isn't related to the timer, the clocks.
Okay. When we're back on stage, Lascar will address the group when time comes.
Yeah, I think we're back on stage. I think everyone's back.
My friends, I don't know about you, but I'm not letting my people down. And then there's no way we're gonna fail this mission. So legs up. Leg up now. And let's not waste a minute more. But by the way, when we arrive there, it's like shadows. We have to blend in. All right, Mr. Shiny? Was I fucking clear?
I mean, shiny is Lazarus.
Bugs?
He's actually ignoring you.
Very well. Enjoy yourselves now, and I go running.
Now, the question is, who's leading the group or pathfinding? And so what I would have to do is whoever's pathfinding or leading would roll, and whoever is keeping watch would roll vigilant. If everyone else who isn't, they can assist in keeping watch or pathfinding. The person rolling keeping watch or pathfinding will get a +1 to that roll with the other characters providing support. So who would lead them out?
What do you roll for pathfinding?
You roll
Cunning
yeah,
and bushcraft?
right. Does Lazarus pathfinding fall under vigilant? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, it depends. Most of the time it's cunning, unless you're a pathfinder, then it's vigilant.
Like my ability to pathfind is only 12, so I don't know what everybody else's is.
If it's cunning, mine is higher.
Oh, and I also get a second chance. Well, I don't know if it's cunning for everybody, or is it
Yeah,
for vigilant?
it's
Just
vigilant
depends.
for Lazarus.
Pathfinders.
And he gets
Okay.
a second chance to fail because he's a Pathfinder.
Okay.
So he gets two chances to fail every time he rolls.
Right, those are better odds. A favored 12 opposed to a 15 is better. You're a better Pathfinder. I guess I will be on the lookout.
Okay, so a vigilant. Lascar is going to be kind of on the lookout for danger. Is Verama and
Or I can possibly assist with the pathfinding as well.
right. It's really a group decision. If
I
you
think
assist,
Gutom also could do some lookout. He's pretty
Okay.
high vigilance.
okay.
Lascar will assist with the pathfinding then.
All right, so Lazarus would get to roll a vigilant at +1 for pathfinding. And Verama, do you help keep lookout?
Yeah, I can help keep lookout. I'm not very good, but Homero can look as well.
Right, and so Gutorm could make a cunning roll or vigilant roll, my fault, for lookout at +1.
Nice.
Right, very good. Yeah, Lazarus easily starts tracking his way in the direction that Yoletta pointed out. Lascar's kind of behind him. They're both pathfinding and leading the group through the forest of Davokar. Eventually, they come within enough trees where they can actually see Carvosi. And so they kind of get a sense of where they are as opposed to where they were dropped off by the witches where they couldn't see anything. And so they do eventually see the high plain of Carvosi off to their left. And keep pathfinding through the woods. Gutorm is probably in the middle with Verama behind him, and him and the goblin and Verama are keeping watch in front of them to the sides and ever. And Gutorm sees this huge track that is paralleling the path that Lazarus and Lascar are following. They're probably following a path or animal path, like a deer path or that sort of at times. But then he sees this huge path next to them that has all the trees are flattened. Big trunks are snapped in half that are roughly the size of a little bit bigger than a troll's arm. And that path that follows them on that side and then veers off away from them, probably at an oblique angle, and then continues on into the forest. What does Gutorm say or do? Or does he say anything?
Lascar. What's up with all the trees and the path on the side here?
May I roll a beast lore about that?
Yeah, you don't have to. You've seen a track like that. You follow a track like this into the glade, high grass glade, and fought a juvenile forest worm. You're almost positive that's a forest worm track. It's just much bigger. Lascar, like you follow the forest worm that snapped some trees and snapped things and was much smaller. This is much wider. The trees that are snapped in half, much bigger growth, much bigger diameter, and the forest worm that made that track was obviously not a juvenile, and it kind of veers off into the forest off your line.
So I know that forest worms are also underground. Yeah, they dig. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a burrow
Yeah.
and a hunting
So
ground or an area.
they can pop out of from anywhere.
They can, but they're not like a trapdoor spider. They're much too big for that, and like you would know, Lascar would know a forest worm burrow when he was approaching one. It would probably be fairly obvious in the woods because they just can't hide their location. So it's not like you can surprise yourself on a forest worm's burrow. It would be, they're not going to pop out of somewhere at, and they also don't attack from underneath the surface, like come up out of the surface. They come up onto the
Okay.
surface to hunt and then go into their burrow. And so he would know that you can track a worm to its burrow, but you can't yet really be surprised by a burrow. It's just
Sure.
the signs would be just obvious.
Is the tracker more like looking like this worm was after our first after the first group?
You don't know that, but you do know that the tract isn't new.
Isn't
Like
new. Okay.
isn't new. Like when you look at it, like if you stop and you look at, you and Gutorm kind of look over there, you notice that the grass is up in the track, sprung back up, and the little saplings that didn't get snapped off that sprung back up. So you can tell that the track itself isn't new. Like everything's not flattened, but it's an older track where the grass and the more willow or supple plants kind of snap back into place after a while, and so that it's a track that's a little bit older. How old? You're not certain. A couple days to a week, maybe longer.
Okay, just then Lascar would say to Gutom, just remember, my friend, that anywhere you go, you're someone's guest.
And so I assume that you don't.
Gutom kind of looks at Lascar kind of with wide open eyes. He nods his head and just taking in the knowledge here from the hunter.
Okay. I imagine you keep on your way. Or do you research this track?
Guys, no going side tracked, huh?
Okay.
No, we wouldn't.
All right, then
focus.
okay.
Gene,
Then
I think I'm gonna have to step off now.
Okay, I got it. I got Verama.
So yeah, either she stays with the group and does
I'll give
something
him
really
support.
stupid and heroic, or she goes out to the forest now and lays down to sleep for a while. Anyway, sorry, I have to
Any
duck out.
special instruction for the magpie?
Yeah, she's got the magpie, so
I
his
try
name is
not to.
Omero.
Omer?
Omero.
Okay. I gotta
Almost
write it
like
down.
Homer. Homer, but kind of Davokarianicized.
Okay. All right, we'll have fun and I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Apologies again. Bye, everybody. Sorry.
Nice.
Bye.
And so I need another pathfinding roll from Lazarus and a keep watch roll by Gutorm. Lascar, do you help Gutorm or Lazarus? I figure you still help Lazarus.
Yes.
And so
Yes, pathfinding.
Lazarus can make that at +1, and Gutorm, you can make that keep watch at +1. There you go. Lazarus keeps leading you fairly well. Like he's pretty good. Lascar's following behind him. They're going through the forest, finding the easiest way, missing bogs and deeper gullies in marshland, which Lazarus knows that Lascar knows can pop up at any time. But Lazarus is pretty darn good with directions. Even if he hasn't been in Davokar, he just needs to be pointed in the right direction, and in a relative compass way, he can find his way even when he doesn't know the sun. And Gutorm and Verama are keeping watch. And as Lazarus and Lascar are maybe stopping at a small high rise and are kind of talking over where to go, and they decide maybe they need to go a little bit 5 or 6 degrees to the south, Gutorm sees bodies probably off their line by, he doesn't notice at first because Lascar and Lazarus may be talking over their path, and he's keeping watch looking out in the forest, and then he sees them. He sees a dead barbarian laying up against a tree, and then he notices more bodies in the forest, probably 4 meters or 12 feet away off into the forest a little bit.
Does it look like there's been a fight?
Yeah, if you step out a little bit, you notice they're in a little bit of a clearing, a little bit of less tree fall. You give a count, you're not quite sure because you see some feet and legs that probably belong to a single, and you kind of look out in that distance and you see that looks like they were in some sort of battle. You kind of scan around the forest and you notice that it's not, they didn't battle like a forest worm or, you know, some creature or there's no broken trees. You see like an axe in a tree above a head. You see some swords and you see some of the bodies have arrows stuck in them.
Yeah, so I step to the side and I see this, and I do like what you said, counting the bodies. Hurry back to the group, and hey, guys, there's at least a dozen of bodies laying around here. Could I go check the pockets?
Loot?
And
I kind of give.
yeah, Gustav takes a no answer as a yes.
I kind of give
So
you a
Gustav
dirty
kind of
look.
strays off a little bit to just at least to the closest barbarian to see if there is something of interest there.
Okay. Lazarus, as the goblin like tells you about these dead, what does Lazarus do as a goblin kind of walks off walks away, you know, 3-4 meters, 10-12 feet?
Kind of gives him a dirty look and he starts tapping his foot like, make it quick.
Okay. Lascar, what do you do as a goblin tells you about these bodies and goes to check them out?
Actually, it's close enough with this kind of like double consciousness of being on time pressure and all that, keeping aware of the surroundings. Lascar still feels the need to identify the guys, not to investigate too long. You know, he's not going to try to figure out the equation of the whole fight and all that. Possibly look for a spare throwing axe,
Okay.
and be on his way as soon as that's sorted.
Okay. So Lazarus waits off, keep an eye of which direction to go, and Gutorm and Lascar goes check out the bodies. Lascar knows immediately that they're Odavs because of the way they're dressed, the cut of their clothes, the threads they're wearing, and the way they handle, the way their belts are, that sort of thing. What they see as they kind of approach is that they are in a little bit of a clearing, and in the clearing there's more of them. There's 11 dead Odavs, and they approach the one that's leaning against a tree. He's kind of on the outside of that group. He's leaning against a tree, and he's been stabbed through the chest with likely a sword. He has his axe by his side, and he's probably been dead, Blaskar would guess, or Gutom would guess, maybe a day and a half. The blood is dried. In the small clearing, the Odavs are scattered about. They got obvious wounds from axe and sword and arrows, which are dark arrows with black fletching. There's 2 Odavs which seem odd because they're face down, facing away from the group, looking as if they were outward, and have axe blows to the back of their heads.
Lascar takes one of them arrows.
Okay, so you inspect the
Not
arrows
now,
out.
just for later. I just pick it on the way.
Okay.
Gene,
Fi-
does that make it look like they were executed? Do you mean? Because closer to the back of the head.
Well, those two are in parallel, like they were standing together, and the way they fell, their faces and bodies, they're on their chest with their faces away from the main circle that's behind them. So the 8 others are dead behind them, but these two are like they are standing
Separate.
together, right? Look like they were hit from behind and died right there and then landed on their face. Actually, Lascar would look at one of them, and one of them is laying on his sword, like it was never out. The other one looks like the sword is halfway out, but isn't pulled out all the way. Like they never got their swords out of their scabbards. The one is laying on his under one leg, and the other one's open. All of them kind of have arrows. Most of them have arrows in them, but they also oddly have sword cuts and mostly sword cuts in them. And the arrows are in their backs or their legs. Lascar really doesn't find any arrows in their fronts. All the arrows are dark. He picks one out and he looks at it, and he would know that it's common, or that these are like arrows that he would expect from an elf, because they're dark with black fletching, which is a sign of the Iron Ring, or the that type of elf. What I would have Lascar do is roll probably cunning, because he's bushcraft and tactician. That would make the most sense.
Flat.
Yeah, Lascar, you pick out this arrow, and although it looks like an elven arrow, it's not what you expect. It seems more shoddy, like the fletching, the black fletching is recent, or it looks like an elven arrow, or people who weren't as bushcraft, or a Bayegan maybe, but maybe you've seen elven arrows in true, and this arrow doesn't look as fine an arrow as you would expect. Gutorm, you don't find purses. You hunt the first body and maybe get dejected. I imagine you would hunt a couple more bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't find a purse among them. No purse, no gold.
There's no valuables there.
They have weapons, but you don't find any thaler.
Elves don't care about riches.
So you're saying this is something
this is
else?
a setup. Of course.
While Lascar and Gutorm are inspecting the bodies and trying to find Thaler, Lazarus, you're at the trail, keeping a watch, and you start to see shapes moving through the forest. You've heard of jackars and beasts, and you see them come loping through the forest. Nothing lays dead for long in Davokar.
Right.
Free food is free food, and you see them split off. You can't really
So
tell
right away.
how many of them are, but you see them
Right
kind of
away, I alert them. Boys, we
start to
got company.
encircle. They start to encircle the group. So you yell out.
Yep.
All right.
Company, boys.
Go ahead.
That's all I say. There's company. Get ready.
Lascar and Gutorm, what do you do?
I'm readying my bow.
Okay.
Is it too late to just head off?
No. I think Lascar would know that the jackars have come to feed. There's dead, and you could defend these barbarians from an ignoble end, or you could leave them to
I
Davokar.
I think like Lascar says, boys, just fucking live it. Just everyone needs their share.
Okay. And you and
So,
Gutorm.
so we're moving.
I would do so. Come on, let's move as one.
Okay.
Okay. So you regroup with Lazarus, and the jack cars kind of fan out around you. Like, if you make a quick count, you don't know, 10, 12, 15, it's hard to tell. But as Lazarus and Gutorm move away from the dead bodies and regain position with Lazarus, they see the circle break in front of them as the other group kind of regains and kind of goes past them in a wide area and is obviously going to regain with the other jack cars and feed off the dead. And you got this hole kind of in front of you that you could easily just slip out and not contest them
What we would
having a
do.
meal. Right. Okay. And so
Is
you
this
head
some
out.
kind of sorry for interruption, but is this
No.
some kind of a wolf or
Yeah, Jackar is a kind of like a jackal wolf. They're pretty
Yeah.
common in Davokar. They hunt in packs. They're probably about slightly bigger than a gray wolf, but kind of thinner.
Yeah.
Sharper.
Okay, thanks.
And so you head out. You make it a short distance, and you eventually hear yips and yowls as a pack starts feeding, and hierarchy is maintained: who eats first, who eats last, and Lazarus needs to make another pathfinding roll at +1, and Gutorm make a keep watch roll at +1. Yeah, you guys make it all the way. So Lazarus easily finds his way. He even kind of sees the ridges as they start to form on either side. You know, in the distance, he knows this land is going to start to ridge on both sides and then kind of create a furrow in the middle. And him and Lascar keep on that track. They easily can kind of tell where they come from. Like, they had no difficulty following the Witchy Aletta's kind of positioning. Gutorm and Verama keep watch, and Gutorm, you're in that middle, and you come probably to a halt again to catch your bearings. How are you going to go up this kind of furrow? And you look off to the right, and you see a man laying up against a tree with his pants down to his knees. You can't really tell what he looks like because you just see his butt is white, and he's obviously relieving himself. He hasn't noticed you at all, but he looks like an Ambrian hunter, and he's probably a little bit distant, maybe 30 feet, 10 meters away in the brush. His back is towards you, and he's obviously going to the bathroom. What does Gutorm do?
So Ambrians, are they considered friendly to us, or is that we don't know?
Well, what you know is that eight Templars and twice as many Ambrian hunters went with 2 Wrath Guards to find and deal with the elves.
Yeah, that's right. I kind of quietly bumped my elbow into Lazarus' hip and check over there. Is that the people who left from Kavosti?
Perhaps it is. Then I'll approach and call out, "Well met." Pull up your
Okay.
pants, man.
So you go through the woods to approach the man who is going to the bathroom.
Up and I
What
just
is-
say, "Well met," and just tell him to pull up his pants.
does Lasker do
When
as Lazarus crawls out?
Lascar disappears, blends in the wild.
What's his plan when he does that?
Be on the lookout for others,
Okay.
and while still being at eardrop on them, so to know if he's part of the group we were trying to outrun.
Okay.
But mostly be on the lookout for a surprise.
Are you going to kind of stay next to the group or tuck in towards the guy that's out in the forest? You're
Want to
muted.
tuck
Oh
in,
yeah,
right?
sorry, I muted myself.
That's okay.
No, I just disappear.
Okay. Roll a
Yeah, but
discreet.
I'm at ear. I can hear them,
Your shot.
so I
Okay.
can hear them.
Roll a discreet to hide. The man like suddenly stumps up and goes to grab his sword and then looks out and sees Lazarus, and he shakes his head and like puts his hand on his head, like puts his sword back in there, like like hastily pulls up his pants, and he's buckling it back on together as he comes walking through the forest looking around. And then he stops because Lazarus is like crouched down, like right next to him, and he sees the barbarian and he pulls his sword and he says, "Oh, what is this business?" And he starts backing up a little bit. You're not with the group. Who are you?
Which group might that be?
The one from Carvosti with the Templars to teach these elves lessons.
Oh. Oh, we're following you just to make sure you get the job done.
Yeah, you would have to make a persuasion check at -2 for that. He starts backing
Uh-oh.
up. He looks at Lascar. His sword is out. You could see like recognition in his eyes when he
Mhm.
looks at Lascar, and then he looks back at Lazarus, and then he looks at Gutorm, and you see recognition of him all of a sudden, like he's seen you before. You're from Karosti, and what is this bullshit? And then he starts to back up as quickly as possible. But and
Guto walks
Lazarus,
up to see his work,
say that
to see
again.
his business. Yeah, Guto walks up to see his business in the woods.
You're gonna walk out behind him.
Yeah.
You attempting to get behind him to prevent him from running?
Yeah, that and see if he got the job done, what he was doing
Yeah.
right there.
So he's gonna turn and run. Maybe even holler out.
I see the slightest move in that direction, I'll fire the crossbow.
Okay, then we're go to initiative.
Okay.
Just a little reminder of the mission is to outrun them, to make sure that we're first on the location, to have a reading, a neutral reading of because they are accompanied by 2 wrath guards. So if the white men were to lie about whatever happened there, why would they have brung wrath guard in the first place? And I just need a bit of a clarifier on the.
So the question is,
The question is, what's the mission? Why do we need to be there first?
the High Chieftain would like you there first to determine what the truth is. If the truth isn't what the Blackguard says, then take action to secure the elves, protect the elves, limit the situation.
Forgot about the elf factor. Yeah, sure.
The Wrath Guards were sent with them to try to balance that situation, but the High Chieftain knows there's only 2 of them.
Yeah, I think what Lascar is looking for is the elves. He wants to contact
Right.
the elves.
What happened is
Okay.
you hit a straggler who had to go to the bathroom, and sees you. You call out to him. He realizes that you're full of shit, or he's not anymore, and he's going to go run. And so we'll go initiative. I just put you on the main map, if you can see yourself. I put a token for the group there, and I will put you in initiative. I got the initiative fixed. Let me do this first. I have to do that again. Okay, so everyone's in initiative. Obviously, the fortune hunter is last, and he's going to turn and shout out a warning. He's outnumbered. The goblins kind of snuck around one side of him, and we'll go to initiative. Lazarus, you have your crossbow out as he starts to run. What does Lazarus do?
Okay, do I have a token to click on?
Yeah, you're on the main map, and there is a token right in front of him that says, you might not, I'll put it so you can see Fortune Hunter. Can you see the Fortune Hunter right next to Saran's pyramid?
You need to target the guy, the fortune hunter.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, I can see him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Lazarus, that crossbow bolt goes out, out into the distance. You may hear it hit a tree, but you miss. Is there anything you're going to do with your move action?
It's a move action to reload.
Yeah, it is a move action to reload. He's going to turn and run, but it is a move
Okay,
action.
do I think just based on the density of the forest, do I think I'll get another shot?
No.
Well, then I wouldn't bother reload.
Okay. What would Lazarus do?
I'm gonna kind of wait to see what everybody else does. If they,
Okay.
if the
Would
group
you
seems to
plan to?
pursue.
Yeah. Would you plan to give chase? Otherwise, if he somehow lives to make a run for it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of, yeah.
Okay, that was just what I was asking, so I would know.
I mean, I
Last,
drop the crossbow and prepare to pursue.
okay. Okay. Lascar, you see Lazarus fire a crossbow bolt. It goes off into Davokar. The man has turned, is preparing to run. You're in close enough distance. There's not a lot of trees between you, but he's obviously going to increase that distance and shout out. What does Lascar do?
He has shot out already, yeah?
Yeah, he is shouting like he's running.
Okay. Lascar will run ahead and try and intersect his escape route further down, and then to be in the right spot to stop him from going further away, and throw bolas at the guy.
Okay. Roll your bolus first. I think that all happens together, but yeah, you make a run. As you're running, try to get him with your bolus, and it's low density fire, so maybe something trips him up, or he stumbles a little bit, but it doesn't make it. As you're trying to get around the side of him, I would have you make a opposed quick test against the fortune hunter, and so you can click on him and you can click quick and see if you can get past him as he's running. There you go. So Lascar gets around the side. he's quicker than as he's running. Maybe his miss bolus, the whirling of it, takes the man off his stride a little bit, and he angles a little bit. But somehow Lascar gets around the other side before the man can get away, and brackets him between Lazarus and himself. Gutorm, you've kind of gone into the woods a little bit. Check out the man's business. He starts to run and raise his voice. What does Gutorm do?
Is yeah, as he starts to race, by reaction, Gutorm kind of jumps on him with his knives.
I think you can move to melee, like get close to him enough and
Yeah.
make a melee attack with them. That's perfectly within a move action in a melee attack.
Yeah,
and-
so then I just do one separate attack with each dagger, right? For the twin attack, and I was asking about the feint. So it says also every such attack gains the same advantage as if the opponent was surprised. What exactly does that mean in this game?
Hence, you have advantage. +2 to hit, +1d for 2 damage to each attack.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, because he has novice. He has a novice, so he uses discreet. That's why it's good with the short weapon. And every such attack gains the same advantage as if the opponent was surprised. As if each right. So I think that's what it means. I think you get advantage
It does.
when you
Yeah.
use feint and double weapon.
It's an
So
early mighty combo, but it
yeah, so I don't do any modifiers on it, just a normal attack.
Yep. You
Yeah.
select
And
him or you
Oh, I select the advantage.
right, and so you can
Yeah.
mouse
Okay, I got
over
it.
him and hit T, and it will select him, and you can click on the advantage button. Okay. Yeah, and then you can roll the second attack. What does that look like, Gutorm? What does it look like when Gutorm's come through the forest with both his blades in his hand?
He dies.
No, the fortune hunter's still alive. But what do the attacks look like?
No, it looks like when he turns around to try to run, I managed to kind of step on some old stub or something like that, and jump up and kind of stabs both the knives in the shoulders of the guy.
Okay. Like you're leaping upwards.
Yeah.
Using his knee and
Yeah, I'm kind of hanging on his back after my knives in the shoulders or something like that.
Okay. And that's maybe why Lascar gets around him. Gutorm slips in there and attacks him, giving Lascar enough room to get around the fortune hunter or the Ambrian hunter. You hear Verama behind you whispering some words, and resolute. Okay. Yeah, and so she starts whispering some words behind you. None of you can really understand what she's doing, but it doesn't take whatever it is. The Ambrian hunter looks at her for a moment and looks like he's going to glaze over, and then he just snaps to, comes back to himself, and he is now bracketed by Lascar and Lazarus. He keeps yelling out, and the only one he can really attack is Gutorm, because he's the only one in melee with him. So he lashes out at Gutorm. Let me re-equip him with one thing though, with his sword. And so he's going to strike at Gutorm with his sword. And Gutorm, you just have to hit the resist button.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it should see him. And he misses. He's got blood kind of coming down each side of him, where Gutorm stabbed him in the upper chest, and he oddly he misses. He's off balance. He's looking over his shoulder at Lasker, who's looped around him, and he keeps yelling out for help and that he's being attacked. Oh no. All right. He's yelling out. Lasker has come around to one side of him, and he can hear voices in the forest and movement towards him as the man is shouting out towards him. And we'll go to round 2. Lazarus, the goblin's in front of the Ambrian hunter. Lasker has bracketed him behind him, and Verama has tried some magic that didn't work. What does Lazarus do?
I'll advance on an
Okay.
attack from his front.
Right. Okay. You could probably maneuver where he's flanked.
Okay.
If you want, which is easy to do.
So
I think
that-
Lazarus would know.
That is advantage.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, Lazarus, you strike out with him with your single-handed estoc and carve a big long line down his front. He staggers a little bit, but he's still got his sword, but his voice dies. Like his screaming and his yells for help die off, and they're just mostly a croak as blood starts coming out of his mouth and nose, but he's still kind of wavering there. Lasker, what do you
And
do?
if I see that, then I finish him off with a stiletto.
Oh, you have double attack?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you can roll that. Yeah, okay. Lazarus, you easily take him out with a stiletto as he's kind of wavering there. His voice kind of dies, and you end him. How does Lazarus do that with his small stiletto? Which is kind of cool. In the thing.
Yeah, he would go for the swift kill, even though he looks like he's almost dead.
Okay.
So he goes for the jugular, tries to stab him in the jugular.
Just puts the stiletto in his neck.
Yep.
He goes immediately still, and then kind of falls over and pulls himself off the stiletto, and dies on the forest floor. Oops, I accidentally took you off. Lasker, you hear commotion running towards you as coming towards the hunter's cry, even as Lazarus kills him. What does Lasker do?
He does this kind of all sort of like I don't know, hoping that they then understand that that will be the shout he'll do when he find them again later, and he disappears and tries to circle around to the location that we were headed for in the first place. He disappears.
Like heads off into the track you were taking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Away and around to jet back. Arch around, dodge the incoming people,
Okay.
and head for the objective.
All right. So Lasker turns and runs towards the direction
Kind
you're
of
heading.
signaling his friends as he disappears, like making his typical, Lascar
Yeah, so they can follow him.
song.
Okay. Um, Lazarus, do you follow Laskar as he moves away? You can hear
Yes.
the sounds of coming men and women. And Gutorm, do you follow too?
Yeah, I try to blend with the forest and disappear a little bit stealthy and follow the voice or the song from Alaska.
Okay. If Gutorm's last and he has the best discreet, he can make a roll to try to cover your movements away from the group. As the last person in line, as Verama turns and runs with Laskar too, follows his noise, Gutorm kind of brings up that last end, and he can roll a discrete test to either cover tracks or lead, make a false lead, as the men and the other group kind of will reach that area after you guys have left.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that.
Okay. Okay. So the group leaves. You run through the forest towards the direction you were going, and between the ridges that form and the furrow, eventually the ridges rise and rise and rise. You leave the voices behind you and shouts, and you hear them for a while. You hear them probably trailing you for a while, and Gutorm's in the rear, and then the sounds of them kind of die off. And you eventually know you're in the hollow of the two ridges. And do you keep running up that hollow in the ridges as a group, or do you stop and regroup? What do you do, Lasker, since you're in front?
I'm halfway between taking a turn to set up a trap or
Okay.
just rush. I think I set up a trap so to delay the coming of these guys, and have Gutorm Verama past me, and just not to them that I'll be right back. I'll be right there. It takes a turn, I think, for a trapper.
Yeah, you roll a cunning test. What I think it would happen is if you set a trap and you
A
pass your
combat
cunning,
action. It's only a combat action to deploy. I can build an improvised trap. This requires a whole turn to complete.
Yeah, I think you have time, and I think the way it would work is if you pass your cunning roll, you actually buy back one of those pies on before. So
I like that.
You buy yourself
I buy time.
right? You buy time, and because at the moment your time is running out, but you buy yourself time by passing the cunning roll.
Yeah.
Setting a
If I
trap.
fail it, if I fail it, I spend an spending an experience point to
Okay.
reroll. I should not have said that, but
Can you do that? By the way?
Yeah, you can spend an experience to reroll. Yeah, so your watch the before clock gets a light pie. So uh, Laskar sets this trap in a way that he knows maybe they're going to follow him, and he won't know that. He won't know that the trap was successful until later, but it does buy you time.
it's a typical little trap with springing like branches that comes right in your face. But it's a
Right.
double one, so you dodge the first one, and you actually meant to get the next one.
What happens is that they become more cautious. They slow down because they're expecting more and more traps. The hunters do, and the other ones. So Laskar's trap goes off, catches one of the following hunters or even Templars, and the whole group slows down because now they're worried about walking into other traps, and it buys the group time. As Lazarus and Gutorm are running, Verama's with them, and they eventually the gully between the two ridges becomes more like grassland. The trees kind of recede. The center of that gully is mostly going to be high grasslands, and through that high grasslands, you eventually see what looks like an area of combat. You're still a little ways away. You can notice one figure that's standing there in the distance, but you don't see any other people standing in the high grass. But you know, in the short distance, a little ways away, is probably where the event took place. What does Lazarus and Gutorm do before
Pick up.
Lasker can catch him?
Yeah, I pick up my pace.
Okay, you're going to go straight into the area then.
Yes.
Okay, Gutorm. Lazarus leads a straight line. Pathfinder he is. That's where it is. He already knows his way. He's going to go straight, least resistance. You're in somewhat higher grass, which is probably taller than the goblin. What does Gutorm do? How does he follow Lazarus, or does he take a different way?
So he's running right into the camp, you said?
Right, he's running right at the moment.
Yeah, I think Dom is trying to find some high ground. Maybe some if he can find a tree or something with some.
Up the ridge a little bit. Like he could probably
Yeah,
move
at
up the
least.
grasslands, up the ridge a little bit.
Yeah, so he can get a nice view for shooting if needed. At least so he has a good overview.
All right. Lazarus, Gutorm kind of flips out to the side, maybe starts going up the higher ground a little bit, and is going to approach from the side. As you head on straight, Verama's behind you, and eventually Lasker is going to catch up from setting his trap. You enter a kind of place where the grass has all been flattened. You see a number of bodies. Most of them are elves. You see one elf is standing upright and seems to be, as you enter this kind of clearing, administering aid to other elves who are down and are down. There's 3 other elves that look like they've been injured, and one of them, another elf, is administering aid as you enter the clearing. As soon as you enter the clearing, that elf steps in front of them. The ones that are wounded, she draws a long, thin blade with a little bit of a curve and a secondary blade in her other hand, and she hisses at you in a language you don't really understand at all. What does Lazarus do?
Oh, I would just halt and drop the crossbow. Just put my hands high so sees that I'm unarmed right now.
Okay, you put your hands up. Laskar, you come into the clearing. You see Lazarus and this autumn elf. I think Laskar would know that this is an autumn elf, and the other ones are summer elves. They're shorter. Summer elves are shorter, 4.5, 5 feet tall. One of them, the autumn elf, is taller, same height as a Ambrian or barbarian, probably mid 5, 6 feet, 165 centimeters, that sort of thing. And one of them appears to be maybe an older summer elf, a little bit taller than the others. But apparently when you look around the field, you see a handful of dead summer elves, handful of dead autumn elves, but you only see these 3 live kind of summer elves that are all injured and 1 uninjured autumn elf. You probably make a quick count, and there's maybe 20 dead elves, maybe 3 Ambrians dressed in normal clothes. And Lascar has his hands up. I mean, Lazarus has his hands up.
Lazarus.
Right, sorry. You would pick both L names. Okay, what does Lascar do?
Lascar comes in with his spears held the wrong way, you know, just to show that he's not coming kind of like, he just holds a stick, it's just not meant to do harm. And in his other hand, he holds the fake elven arrow, and comes in kind of nonchalant, and says, "Is what's going on here? What's the catch? Someone is trying to set you up? I mean, no disrespect, but I've seen better elven arrows in the past."
Yeah, she approaches you. She still has her swords out. Doesn't matter that you're dragging your spear point behind you. She understands what that means, and she looks at you.
I break this arrow, like, you know, like it's crap. It's not worth what they're. It's not worth them, you know.
Her eyes flick to Lazarus, and then you see her part turn because the goblin Gutorm is circling around. She kind of turns slightly towards the goblin and to the side, and she speaks in halting tongue that both Lascar and Lazarus can understand. That not my arrow. No elven make arrow like that. We come to emissary Carvosti, attacked by Ambrian men. Lascar and Lazarus know that they have about 20 minutes before the other group catches up.
He said that he was going to Carvosti with 2 human ambassadors?
No, just
I didn't get it.
emissary. Yeah, she just said emissary, like they were emissaries of the elves going to Carvosti, which hasn't happened in quite some time, and that they were attacked as they were moving towards Carvosti.
Well, she speaks
Okay.
in more common tongue now.
Right, she is haltingly in barbarian, and she probably switches over to Ambrian enough where
Okay.
you both get a sense of what she's saying. Her eyes realize that she has to make herself understood. It's just her. The summer elves behind her, although they kind of stand up as you get there, you realize they have their swords out, but one of them can't
They're
even lift
wounded.
it off the ground. He's got blood, running down the side. That she would be the only resistance you would have.
Right. And so I just tell the 3 of them, let's get out of this vicinity and we'll escort you to where you want to go.
Yeah, he's right. There's no time to lose. 20 minutes away, there's a whole bunch of them led by a black cloak and dodgy one. And
Okay.
he's pretending that you have been attacking them. And something is wrong. We've been sent by the Huldra herself. And those guys are not aware we outrun them.
So you're
We're
gonna
here to make sure that Carvosti stays the place it's supposed to be.
Yeah, she doesn't have any choice to believe you. You're offering her aid, and despite the Lazarus offered aid first, not the barbarian Lascar. She knows barbarian etiquette about offering aid, but it is obvious if they stay here, the likelihood is that they're going to die. And so she has to accept your aid. There's no role to manipulate or to convince her to go, to go. That doesn't really make much sense. And she kind of nods at you and looks out into the distance, and then you see her look over all her dead there, and then she just sheaths her swords because she's going to have to leave them here.
Yeah.
And looks at Lazarus and Lascar and says, "Which way?
Follow
How
us.
how we proceed?" Okay. The summer elves are not going to make it unless you carry them.
Both of them, or just one of them can't walk?
Yeah, there's 3 of them. They're going to slow you down a lot. You can help them, but you're trying to move. Your choices are to let them straggle.
Is he the only one who's healthy enough to
Okay.
walk?
So,
The single
Dean,
female.
how many are
Yeah.
wounded?
So you got 3 summer elves. They're smaller. So summer elves, although the Ambrian Lazarus wouldn't realize elven life cycle, summer elves are shorter, smaller, a little bit taller than goblins, but they're smaller. They probably weigh just a little bit more than a goblin, but not by much. And so there's 3 summer elves. One of those summer elves are just a little bit taller, a little bit heavier, but they're still summer elves, so they're in young life cycle. And 1 autumn elf who's not injured. So 3 injured summer elves and
Okay.
1 autumn elf who's not injured.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll lay on hands.
Okay.
I don't need to target per se,
Yeah,
right?
let me put you on the map because there is a map for this, but obviously I have no idea what is going to happen, and so I'll put you on the map. I'll pull you
AFK
out.
for like 1 minute. I just have to check on the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
I pulled you out, Lazarus, onto the map. You pick the one up top. Yeah, that one. And you can roll your, so you can do your shadow, that sort of thing.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, Lazarus, you lay on hands to this young summer elf. Eyes are fluttering, barely hisses at you, speaking in halting language that you don't really understand. And the magic just fails. You feel the blackening of your fingertips up to your palms, maybe up your wrists a little bit. You see little tendrils of corruption. You might smell it a little bit like a swamp in your nose. And nothing happens. The wounds still bleed.
And if I go, I didn't reset it from last time, so it should be 4.
Right, so you should be 4. So
Oh,
your current
right.
corruption should be just at 3, just at 4. Yeah, so you could set 4.
4. So, what if I go past 7?
Then you get a permanent blight mark.
That's permanent?
Yeah, visible, like, if I remember correctly, but I have to look. It does last a little while. You go past your temporary threshold.
Now, do you mean it lasts for a while, meaning like weeks? Is that what you mean?
A scene, a temporary, it's an undetermined duration, but the ends at the end of the scene. Whatever
Right.
the scene
Okay.
means.
Okay.
And when do you
All right,
get
then
permanent corruption?
Permanent is when you
Is it-
learn new spells, learn new rituals, bind an artifact. There's other things that give you permanent corruption, like spells, terrain, those type of things, but they typically do temporary. Most permanent comes from the other things, learning rituals, spells, binding an artifact, that sort of thing.
I'm going to
You don't-
risk it and try to lay on hands again.
Okay.
Same guy.
Yeah, you're just at the threshold. You haven't gone over it, So you're just at that mark. You not just see the temporary corruption in your arms tracing up and smell it, but maybe you even taste it a little bit. This kind of rotting taste in your mouth.
Mhm.
But you don't get a stigma at the moment because you haven't really passed that temporary corruption. But you know that you're just teetering on the edge.
On the brink.
Right, you're on the brink of
Yep.
brink of badness.
Okay, and so
Um,
he's just hoping that he healed him enough that he doesn't need to
Yeah,
be
you did.
carried.
yeah,
You
just a
heal him
point on
enough.
the rules.
Yeah, go ahead.
I see there that a character's page 176, the character's total corruption. When a character's total corruption, so permanent plus temporary. When the character's total corruption reaches the character's corruption threshold during a scene, you gain 1d4 permanent corruption. So if you're one step away from that, be very careful.
Yeah, he's right at his threshold. He's at 7. Does it say at your threshold or after your threshold?
Reaches the threshold.
Okay. So he would gain one permanent at some point.
1d4.
1d4.
Wait a minute. I thought I had to go past 7.
No, I'm looking. Let me see.
To reach a threshold is to not past it, huh? I'm not looking to make you a blight beast. I'm just wondering if you would have done that if you knew the risks.
Yeah, I mean, what we do is, if I didn't describe the rule correctly, we know what to do in the future. Permanent. Okay. Yeah, where does it say that? What page?
176.
Yeah, I'm on 176.
The third dot under the bold permanent corruption is suffered when a character's
Okay.
total corruption.
Right. And I explained it differently. I thought it was after. So you're at 7. We're just rules is written. Next time, if you go to 7, you would roll 1d4. For this time, it's learning. We haven't had someone do that.
But if you get temporary corruption, are you saying that you still get a mark, but it's only for the scene? And
Right,
then
but
if
if
you
you go
beat that 7, then you get a permanent?
right, you roll 1d4 permanent. And so the risk is if you hit 7, you roll 1d4, and if you go over 10, then you immediately become an abomination.
Oh, you mean what you're saying is you roll an additional 1d4
Right,
corruption? Is that what you mean?
right,
And you
Permanent.
add that to the 7.
right.
Yeah, but wouldn't I have to go 13 or higher?
Right, you would have to go above 13, right? So you would have room. 1d4 wouldn't make you an abomination at the moment. And so it's up
But I
to
would,
you, Lazarus. We can retcon a little bit, and you can roll 1d4 and see how many permanent corruption you get. Rules is written, or because I didn't really explain it as well, we can just go with what we have at the moment, and we know in the future that if you reach that 7, you have to roll 1d4 immediately.
yeah, I think that I would.
Do the second one.
Yeah, be aware of for
Okay.
future reference
Yeah.
because
Right, I didn't explain it as well as, and that's fine.
There is as well the temporary stigma and the permanent stigma, yeah?
Yeah,
Depending on where you if you pass your threshold with permanent points or temporary points.
right. Right now he's just at the temporary, which is what he's got at the moment
Right.
until this scene ends. The smell, the taste, the filigree black on his arms. Gutorm, you're up on the ridge. Perhaps you can hear in the distance them. You see some degree of discussion and parley between Lascar and Lazarus. You see the taller elf sheath their weapons. What does Gutorm do as he's kind of up on that level?
Yeah, I can't see anyone, but I can hear them coming. Or...
Yeah, I think so. Like in the forest, like they're 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away. You Lascar bought you some time, otherwise they'd already be here. They're moving slowly because they're worried about hitting other traps. You can maybe hear them shouting in the distance to each other, clear, that sort of thing, like hopscotch, clear,
Yeah,
clear.
yeah,
You see Lascar and Lazarus parlay. What does Gutorm do?
yeah. Gudom is seeing them down there and kind of can sense the moving through the forest, and he is starting to kind of look up to Laskar and his hunting skills. So he is like trying to do this thing Laskar is doing, like, and it sounds awful. It's more like a rah! Trying to do this song up up on the ridge there. And
Lascar
kinda-
catches it. And
Gene, I want to lead
it kind
them.
of just points.
I kind of want to lead them in a 90-degree angle from the direction that they're coming from. Obviously, I don't want to take them on the path that's going to have a chance to cross their path.
You don't have many options. You
Are we
could
far
do that.
from the lake?
You could do that, but you'd have to go up the ridge, but you'd eventually hit the tree line. But there is some exposure up into the ridge, or you could go straight out the other end of the furrow a little bit further, not go straight at 90-degree angles. You can see Gutorm up on the middle ridge part because you know where he is and he's making these weird sounds, but you could see maybe the top of his head, and you realize that if you could do that, but you'd really have to move quickly to get up over the ridge without the other group seeing you on the ridge. Unless you go straight out the back end, 180 degrees out, and up the furrow. But it is kind of the group's decision which direction to move. Would you still like to do that? Like go try to make it up over the ridge into the tree line?
I think we would take the path where we would have the least chance of detection. I mean, now that we can move a little bit faster,
Okay.
now we have 2 people who are injured. I think that it's important not to be detected first.
Okay. So does that mean up the ridge to the tree line? Just so I know what.
Well, if we go 180, if we go like in the opposite direction they're coming,
Okay.
is there cover in that direction? Is there
Yeah, eventually,
better?
like, you go up the hollow, eventually the high grass turns into trees and eventually the forest, and you kind of lead out that way.
Do we have any idea how many there are? Or we don't know.
Yes, you
said
know that there's
20.
there's 8 Templars. They said
Oh, damn.
twice as many hunters, so you figure, I don't know, 12, 14, 18 hunters and 2 Wrath Guards.
Alaska
I
will
think that's
assist
what.
one of the younger elves.
Okay. And Lazarus is going to carry the other one because he's healed one, and the other 2 can be autumn. Okay. So what I would have Lazarus and Lascar do is make strength checks.
Just straight up.
Yep.
Woo.
All right.
Oh, got a hernia.
Right.
I would
just
probably
slow-
ask somebody else for help if I'm struggling.
It just slows you down. You have trouble. that failure. Gutorm, you see Lascar and Lazarus pick up these two young spring elves, and they start moving into the high glass while you're up on the ridge. You might see eventually movement in the trees. What does Gutorm do, or how does he? What does-
I good. I want to follow the group, but I want to follow a little behind, and maybe so I can fire an arrow to in between to kind of maybe slow them down a little bit.
Yeah, they don't see you at the moment. But I imagine if you're bringing up the rear, you you can be ready with an arrow. You can also try to cover their tracks. Or
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Gutom is following a little bit behind, trying to cover tracks and ready to fire if
Okay.
yeah.
You make a discreet at -2 because Lazarus is struggling through the field and the grass with the one he's carrying, so he's maybe less adroit than Lascar.
Ooh.
Okay. So you make it up. The group starts moving. The autumn elf and the one young spring elf that is healed is moving, following Lascar probably. Lazarus is behind, struggling a little bit, and Gutorm is behind him, trying to cover their tracks. You probably take about 15 minutes up, and you're in that kind of line, and you see the forest is going to begin up in the short distance. You probably, if you look forward in the same direction you go, you might have to move 30, 45 minutes before you get in the forest. If you try to get up the sides of the mountain, up the ridge, it might be a hike, but you would get up into the forest in about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes if you risk the ridge. What does Lascar do, who's in front, leading the party?
I think we would try to. I don't know. What do you guys think? Instinctively, go for the shortest way. No, even if it's a bit of a hike. Is it
I guess we have to.
It's a hard slope. A steep slope. What kind of a slope is it?
No, you can carry them up there. It's a scramble, but it's not that
It's
difficult.
exposed.
Right, it's just exposed, like you.
It's exposed, so it's everything or nothing. It's like
Right.
one roll. If we fail, we get spotted instead of 2 or 3 rolls.
Well, no, what happens is that if you
It's
fail your
stupid to
roll,
say it that way. I'm sorry.
they get advantage, or they get like you're out in the distance. So right now they hear you. They really hear you for whatever. I accidentally
Okay.
rolled into the
Maybe
farm.
let's create a bit more distance before we veer off.
Right. I think it's more
So
important that they don't detect us, so we don't want to go up the ridge line, even if we have to go
yeah,
further away from our destination.
Okay.
I
What if
see.
Gutom, I could try and make tracks in a different direction?
You mean cover their tracks and then make tracks in a different direction?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would let you roll discreet. That will be balanced by Lazarus and Lascar's strong check, like before.
Okay. So we
So
-2?
continue forward
okay.
as it does
No, you
that.
may
Yeah.
not have a minus. The only reason you had a minus last time, Gutorm, was because Lazarus
Okay.
failed. So Lascar and Lazarus can make their strong checks. Yeah. Okay. Lascar and Lazarus finds his feet again, just barely though, just barely finds his feet again, and Lascar, leads again through. The elves follow Lascar. Lazarus come behind him, catches his feet again, doing much better, and Gutorm takes up the rear and needs to make a discrete roll flat. No disadvantage or advantage. Oh, very nice. And how does Gutorm do that? What does he do? Like, do you have an idea of how he makes a false trail?
Yes, it's something I do every day. at least for my wife, so she believes I done something at home. No, Gutorm, he's I guess he's kind of trying to like leaves on the ground, rub some leaves like where you can see the people have been walking, and try to like scramble them so it looks like it's natural again.
Okay.
Maybe look for the break some branches in another direction, and yeah.
All right.
Just make like a mess in the other direction, like broken branches and footsteps in the mud, and yeah. So it seems like there's been more than one person or people going that direction.
So Lascar and Lazarus start moving up into the tree line out of this hollow between the ridges. They slowly start to gain elevation. The trees start to form into the hollow as it starts to flatten out. Gutorm probably eventually meets up with them, or comes in the back end as they get into the tree line, having led a false trail, maybe into the tree line a little bit too, as he returns around to circle back and gain the group. You're in the low tree line, in the trees now, to take a breather. You look down and you can probably see the company, the other searchers. You see the Templars leading and tracking through the in the distance through the grasses of that hollow. You see a mass of hunters behind them in a string. You probably noticed the Wrath Guards. Maybe one is in the mix or behind the Templars, and one is in the very back end. You've bought yourself quite a bit of time because they investigated a scene for a little bit, tried to figure out what was going on, found your trail from Lazarus stumbling through, and you see them branch off. You see them hesitate a little bit. The Templars are there, and then they follow Gutorm's false trail. What's the plan of the party? Where are they taking the elves?
I said, I want to move further away, even if we have to kind of double back to avoid detection. I mean, that's kind of what feels like would be
The-
the best approach.
Yeah, these elves were headed to Carvesty, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to find a stealthy way to go back there. So primarily, creating a distance between us and the Blackcloak and Templars and company.
Yeah. How should we move two wounded people stealthy?
Possibly.
We're not, like I said, we're moving further away from them. That was my point. So even if
Yeah.
it's the opposite direction of the direction we want to go,
Yeah, there is always as well the option, like Gutorm
and it doesn't.
initiated. He could possibly, but if it's maybe risky to find yourself isolated if you have to like sidetrack them by creating a secondary, more obvious, create a false path and then we separate from you. I don't know. It's. Do you have bushcraft,
it doesn't-
Gutom?
No.
Even if they were going back to town, it doesn't matter if they get there first now. Like we could get there after them if that's where they're headed also, right? Just the point is we want to get them escorted there safely.
Makes sense. Yeah, we're not in the clock is not showing anymore, so
Yeah, it's not, right. It's not ticking, right?
no more clock ticking. Yeah, no, you're right. Let's keep together. Good job.
So
I
I,
think
What do you
that's
think?
wise.
I
Yeah.
think the decision is, are you going to hold up in the forest overnight to secure them, or are you going to double back towards Carvosti now?
Could I check the area to see if there's some place that could be nice to hide up? Like
Yeah, you could roll a discrete text to find a hidden hollow or a group of trees,
Cave.
or to cover your group if you were willing to just like lay low and be a rabbit in a hole and wait it out.
I think that's what we would do. We would try to
Okay.
double back. They're searching for us right now.
Right. Okay. If Gutorm wants to find them a place in.
Oh, I already rolled. I thought you said.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah. I got an 8.
I was gonna say if Lascar wanted to help him, he'd get +1 because he has bushcraft. But your discreet is pretty darn good as it is. Yes. So I think as you're moving through Davokar, the group decides to secret the elves and the wounded and find a dense thicket or overgrowth, and go to ground, hide out before the searchers who have been led off track, hoping that they as a group wouldn't be able to find you because Templars and hunters would eventually give up in deep Davokar, and chasing down elves, perhaps, that might lose their zeal, or the Wrathguards would convince them that they're not going to catch you in the woods themselves, and that you would hide out and go to ground at the moment. And I think we're ended there as you hide out with the elves to decide what your next step is.
Can I just
Yeah,
ask
can I?
a last question to one of the
Sure.
elves? Since when the elves are the prey and not the hunter?
What would she say to that? She would probably respond to you in a way that, because Ambrians are evil and the darkness that's seeping into the forest and the world, you would hear that and I think hear the echo of the words that are almost the same as the Templar saying them when he was standing before the High Chieftain. They're the same words said in a slightly different manner.
So
She
I
asks
was.
you if you are taking them to Carvosi, or would it be safer to return to the Hall of Tears?
What's there?
We're gonna escort you to Carvosi.
Okay. I don't know if Lascar knows what the Hall of Tears are. I don't think he does. Verama isn't here to tell you either. But So you go to ground. Would Lazarus or Gutorm have any questions for the elves?
No, I think that we kind of have an idea what's going on at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I, as a player, do have a question about the elves.
Sure.
I don't know much about the elves in this setting, but I know they're kind of different take on them. Could I have the short explanation about the elves?
Yeah, a lot of non-Ambrian, non-barbarian races have a life cycle that they go through changes, which means they don't necessarily have a cocoon or a pupa or that sort of thing, but they have these distinct changes where they change drastically. The elves themselves have those kind of stages. They have 5 stages, really. Only 4 of them most people know. Summer elves are like fairies, are short, small, 3, 4, 5 feet, and then after so many years, 50 years, 100 years, they become so spring elves, they become summer elves, and then they become autumn elves, and then winter elves. There's a 5th category that's outside that's alluded to but not spoken. So elves and a couple other races have that kind of progression where they have these distinct different phenologies at particular times, and they go through it at different stages of their life, and they're not guaranteed to make it through that stage. Just like a butterfly in a cocoon, it may not arrive, but they have that kind of stages. And that's the elves themselves. They, as a group, they entered a pact with humans to safeguard Davokar and the fall of the Symbaroum Empire. They're diametrically opposed to certain aspects of Ambrian culture, which we made somewhat obvious when Laskar asked that question, and you heard the same sort of animosity. Is that kind of good overview, sort of?
Yeah. So elves are for most people in Davokar, they're seen as not exactly friends, but
if you're Ambrian, and you're a particular type of Ambrian, a treasure hunter, that sort of thing, you would find them to be, you may classify them as evil or just adversaries. They do not want the forest disturbed. They will take out hunter groups, or certain parts of the elves will do that. Ambrians don't have a lot of contact with them aside from that point of influence, like that animosity or conflict. They want to develop the forest, use the forest, reap from nature what they are guaranteed by God to reap, and that is their place and goal in life. Whereas the elves are protecting the forest from reawakening the evil, having planted the trees. But the elves themselves have different groups within them, including Ambrians. Not all Ambrians think the elves are evil, but treasure hunters who are attacked by a particular elf group, that's their only connection or contact at the moment.
yeah.
There is one elf ambassador in Yindaros to the queen, a autumn elf that tries to obviously be an ambassador, or try to get them to not. The elves have taught the barbarians taboos to not disturb the forest, and have entered a pact with them that they wouldn't be at war. Now, the barbarians are not necessarily towing the line to that agreement, but the amount of stepping over those boundaries or those taboos, or using the forest or hunting for treasure, is seemingly within the limits that the elves are willing to tolerate. And there hasn't been outright animosity or war against barbarian elves since 400 years, roughly, when the last elves really came to Carvosti. And so that's the kind of states the barbarians have awakened darkness in Davokar and have stepped away and have violated those taboos at certain times, but the elves haven't taken to task, haven't taken them up on that breaking of that pact. Whereas the Ambians outright, come into the forest to wreak havoc.
So it's been 300 years or so that an emissary showed up at Carvosti.
Roughly, Prince Aniano was the last one. And that was because of war. The elves came to Carvosti. The taboos needed to be strengthened. Prince Aniano came all by himself to the front gates, met with the present High Chieftain and the Holdra at that time. After that meeting, he left, and the taboos were strengthened to prevent darkness from Davokar from awakening. And an agreement that forestall war against the barbarians and the elves were cemented. Elves have not come to Carvosti, at least in the characters' memory, since that moment. Whether the barbarian characters would know that history, it's probable, but it is, generations ago that Prince Aniano came to Carvosti and that pact was made.
Yeah.
I had fun in the session. I did a couple of different things. Hopefully you had fun. The counters and the seeing if you guys make it. I had no idea whether you're going to be there before, after, at the same time, or after. But I do find it was really interesting that you all made it there after. I think using the trap and buying yourself time on the clock was a fun thing to do. Obviously, I didn't expect that, but I thought it was a kind of cool thing to add to the clock, and it was very good use of using those things. I like the role playing at the beginning, the part down before the stairs and down the stairs, and the trek to the forest. I liked when Lazarus yells out at the guy in the thing, and you lose time because that's what an Ambrian might do. It all kind of gets a little bit more tense because you're losing time. He yells out because I don't know what you're going to do at any of those situations. But I had a lot of fun. Hopefully you had fun. Only small combat, but there was options for combat that you decided not to, and there's obviously potential for combat if you arrived late or at the same time, or if you didn't kill that guy and make it away. Bigger combat could have happened.
Right.
If we didn't kill the guy who was relieving
Having a
himself in
shit.
the forest.
Yeah, if Lascar didn't get around him or failed that roll, if
Oh yeah.
Gutorm didn't attack him straight up in melee and decided maybe he was going to shoot a bow, the guy gets to run. There's no one there. So if you do fail those rolls, that has outcome. The guy gets away, and then they're hot on your trail, and then you don't outrun them. They meet you at the same time. All those rolls count. All those decisions count.
I gotta say, we
Yeah,
were pretty lucky with the rules this session overall.
Yeah. But I was wondering about twin attack thing. Does it roll that at once? Because I don't understand the calculation in the chat. Because it says damage 1d6 plus 1d4.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
he might have a bonus.
You
Is
had
that
an
because
advantage
of the
because of feint.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice early strong combo.